911. What is the location of your emergency?
It's Monday, February 24th. There's a crisis at the home of Sarah Boone, prompting her to call 911.
Is this a police or medical?
My boyfriend is dead.
Okay, send the line for the fire department. Do not hang up.
The fire department takes over the call, and for the next few minutes, officials are obtaining critical details about what happened.
No, tell me exactly what happened there.
My boyfriend and I were playing last night, and I put him in a suitcase and we were playing. And it's like kind of hide and seek kind of thing. So I fell asleep, and I woke up, and he was dead in the suitcase, so I don't know what happened.
Okay, you hanging from somewhere or what, ma'am?
No, I pulled him out of the suitcase. I tried giving him CPR.
Fire and rescue instruct Boone on how to give chest compressions.
Just keep on pumping. That's all you need to do for me. Keep on pumping his chest for me. I don't need you to stop and talk or anything. I just want you to count out loud for me, okay?
31, 32. Please hurry.
Okay, man, they're getting there as fast as they can, okay?
He's stiff and he's purple.
EMS arrived within minutes and advised Boone that her boyfriend, Jorge Torres, had been down too long and there was nothing more they could do. Boone explained she and Torres were drinking the night before and thought it would be funny if he got inside of a suitcase for a game of hide and seek. The next day, deputies returned and arrested Boone and charged her with second-degree murder in Torres's death.
Why is she panicking?
Boone's story about a childhood game gone awry unraveled when investigators say they found video on her cell phone showing Boone taunting and laughing at Torres while he was struggling to get out of the suitcase. Police say he was yelling he couldn't breathe and asking Boone for help. According to police, Boone was captured on video saying, "That's what I feel like when you cheat on me." When confronted with the video, officers say she told them she didn't remember those moments. But to investigators, those moments add up to motive for second-degree murder.
It's really a bizarre case, a lot of strange circumstances, but it's for real. And that video does exist. We're going to take a look at it in just a moment. But let's bring in our special guest joining us to talk about the case. Mark Eiglarz, criminal defense attorney, former prosecutor, and you can check out Mark and his law firm at speaktomark.com. And that's Mark with a K. All right, Mark, there's a lot of bizarre parts of this. Let's watch the video together. We're going to show a piece of that video just to give folks an idea of what investigators looked at before they came to these charges, and then let's talk some more about it. Let's take a look.
Sarah.
That's my name. Don't wear it up.
Sarah, I can't breathe, babe. Seriously.
Yeah, that's when you do when you choke me.
Sarah.
All right, and the video goes on much longer. We're just going to show a piece of it here, but that's what you do when you choke me, when he's talking about he can't breathe. And then later on, she talks about that's what happens when you cheat on me. First of all, your reaction to this entire situation where he's in a suitcase, she's recording, and they're having this conversation.
I'm going to be completely honest with you and say something I've never said in hundreds of TV appearances. I swear to you, I hoped you canceled me so I wouldn't have to relive what that guy went through in a suitcase. I thought I had covered all the worst ways to die. Well, I can't imagine what these jurors are going to think of that woman who did not assist him in getting out of that suitcase when he said he couldn't breathe. This is hard to watch.
So I'm going to go to get in the suitcase, though. I mean, I don't think she forces him in there. I mean,
she doesn't.
He's got to voluntarily. So how does that impact charges, mental state, culpability if he voluntarily gets into that suitcase? And I guess she's got to zip it because you got to zip it from the outside.
That's why she's only charged with second degree as opposed to first degree murder. What they have to show here in Florida is that she had a depraved heart. So it wasn't intentional, but it was reckless. It was a reckless disregard of human life or property. In other words, she didn't know for sure he was going to die, but she didn't really care, is what they're going to argue.
Now, I listened to her voice. In her statement, she said they had been drinking. I mean, she sounds absolutely like she'd been drinking, but I don't know what the toxicology said. Does that at all become an issue for either side? Does it help prosecutors? Does it help the defense? Does it tell this jury anything if, in fact, she's under the influence at the time all this is happening?
I think it helps the defense. It helped me as I'm analyzing the case, thinking that she's not a complete monster, that at least the alcohol helped explain, at least mitigate why she would ignore his passionate cries that he couldn't breathe, and also what might explain why she ultimately fell asleep and didn't rectify this. Now, that doesn't negate her guilt. It certainly mitigates it. And ultimately, I think that and other factors may lead to the state reducing the charge even further, maybe to manslaughter and giving her some extraordinary outcome, which includes prison time, but nothing like the life that she's facing.
So you're looking at this, and from your experience, you think this is one where prior to going to trial, that this is one that, hey, there's going to be some offers because this is such a unique set of circumstances and state of mind issues that this might be a negotiated plea here?
Absolutely. In other words, if I'm representing her, what I do is I put together a mitigation package, and I make it very clear that there were circumstances that evidenced negligent behavior, like culpable negligence, which is manslaughter. So that would cap it at a maximum of 15 years in prison and 15 years of probation. That's the ballpark that I would want her in, not second-degree murder, because we go to trial on second-degree murder, she's getting potentially life. So you want to avoid that. I would argue for manslaughter and work out some term of years that's acceptable to the next of kin.
Now, you mentioned the passing out, right? That she, and I think it's very possible she may have passed out because she does make a call in the morning to 911, right? When she wakes up. But when you pass out, the fact that she passed out from alcohol, does that play into any sort of a defense here, or is that in the same pile with the drinking mitigation?
I think you throw it in also as part of the defense. In other words, it wasn't reckless behavior, you would argue. She was just so already impaired that she wasn't all there. So how could she really be held accountable? Look, don't kill the messenger. That's what I would argue, but I would want to avoid making that argument. The prosecution would probably bring in their extensive history of violence, where they've both been pretty nasty to each other. And that might play a role also. It's just so ugly. I think it's ripe for some type of plea bargain. I wouldn't air it out if I'm her.
Yeah, I think the part that really will be devastating in front of a jury is when she says, that's what you get when you're cheating on me. Oof. Right? So
not a good set of facts. And worse, that she lied to law enforcement initially, tried to paint some type of picture. But for those 2 videos on her phone, delete, she might have committed the perfect crime. But they've got those videos, and now she's got criminal culpability. You can't argue it's a mere accident.
Right. And is she locked into that hide and seek story from the 911 call?
Well, she said it. Her attorneys can say, well, she was drunk when she said that. Now, upon reflection, here's what really happened. But look, these are bad facts. You put somebody in a suitcase, or they go into a suitcase, you're responsible for them, and ultimately this would not have happened but for her unzipping that suitcase. The argument on the other side is, look, he did it voluntarily. They were playing a game. They were both impaired, and it is just a tragic accident. What do your jurors think? What does the court of public opinion think? That's pretty much what jurors may do in a case like this.
Yeah. Now, the other thing that she does say, though, is she says, this is like when you choke me. So is there any defense going down that road? Kind of like, I'm an abused not spouse, but abused girlfriend. And, I'm the victim of domestic violence here. And this was my way out of all of that.
It cuts both ways. For sure, you'd want to argue that she's a victim of domestic violence if the judge will let it in, because what you're doing is you're saying this wasn't the greatest guy, and you're essentially, don't kill the messenger, trying to devalue his life to some extent so the jurors feel a little differently about her. But it cuts the other way. It's like you then intentionally, there's some spite. There is that depraved heart because he had done some things to you in the past, and now it's payback. It's not as innocent as you're saying. You had anger in your heart. And that could support a second-degree murder conviction.
Yeah, I think it could almost go to first degree. Like you could argue that there was like she tricked him into getting into that suitcase, was angry about the cheating.
Yeah, but those aren't the facts. Easy. I mean, you know what I'm saying? She's got enough to deal with. Those clearly were not the facts, right? He got into the thing willingly, is apparently what they're suggesting. You change the facts, and sure, now you're looking at first degree.
But willingly, but you know, in a trickery way where she's not. Well, we'll see. We'll see. Second degree is life, though. Second degree is life in prison. So
could definitely be life. Yes.
Serious enough.
Yes.
Mark Aguilar, speaktomark.com. Awesome. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you, brother. Always.
The problem is I fell asleep. I fell asleep. When did you do CPR? This morning. When I found it. Before you called? Yes. It's 1 o'clock right now. I tried. I was awake, but I actually got out of the bed at like 12:30ish, whatever. So I came downstairs, and I was like, oh, he's in the suitcase still.
On the docket tonight, one of the most bizarre cases in the history of court TV involving a suitcase, because usually there are body parts of a victim that are severed and found in suitcases that are discarded by the killer. In this case, the suitcase is the alleged murder weapon. Here's the story of Sarah Boone.
911, what is the location of your emergency?
It's Monday, February 24th. There's a crisis at the home of Sarah Boone, prompting her to call 911.
Is this a police or medical?
My boyfriend is dead.
You can send a line for the fire department. Do not hang up.
The fire department takes over the call, and for the next few minutes, officials are obtaining critical details about what happened.
Now, tell me exactly what happened there.
My boyfriend and I were playing last night, and I put him in a suitcase and we were playing. And it's like kind of hide and seek kind of thing. So I fell asleep, and I woke up, and he was dead in the suitcase, so I don't know what happened.
Okay, is he hanging from somewhere or what, ma'am?
No, I pulled him out of the suitcase. I tried giving him CPR.
Fire and rescue instruct Boone on how to give chest compressions.
Just keep on pumping. That's all you need to do for me. Keep on pumping his chest for me. I don't need you to stop and talk or anything. I just want you to count out loud for me, okay?
31, 32. Please hurry.
Okay, man, they're getting there as fast as they can, okay?
He's deaf and he's purple.
EMS arrived within minutes and advised Boone that her boyfriend, Jorge Torres, had been down too long and there was nothing more they could do. Boone explained she and Torres were drinking the night before and thought it would be funny if he got inside of a suitcase for a game of hide and seek. The next day, deputies returned and arrested Boone and charged her with second-degree murder in Torres's death. Boone's story about a childhood game gone awry unraveled when investigators say they found video on her cell phone showing Boone taunting and laughing at Torres while he was struggling to get out of the suitcase.
I can't breathe, babe.
Oh, that's what I feel like when you drink on me.
Sarah, I
too.
Then breathe, Sarah.
Yeah. You should probably shut the
When police questioned Boone the next morning, she seemed to have no memory of that happening.
I fell asleep. I don't know if they suffocated or like had an aneurysm or a heart attack or what.
Boone told investigators she only realized her boyfriend was still in the suitcase when she woke up. Still, investigators say her actions add up to murder. Sarah Boone has pleaded not guilty and maintains her innocence.
All right, take a look, folks. Big hearing this Friday in Florida versus Sarah Boone. And what's the subject matter of this hearing? Well, once again, Sarah Boone having some trouble with her representation. She's been through 5 attorneys. Here's what her 6th attorney has said in his motion to withdraw. The defendant will not be satisfied with any attorney unless said attorney does not have a caseload and can dedicate his or her time solely to Ms. Boone's case. The best possible avenue is to have the defendant represent herself, as no attorney can satisfy her. All right, let's bring back in our think tank. Anyone want the case?
No one wants it.
Pass.
So we've all been there. We've all been there with a client that we just don't want to represent, but we have a duty not to badmouth the client, right? Not to taint the court system. I just want out, Judge. Trust me. If you think I have a good reputation, you know why I want out, but I don't have to say it. I mean, spelling it out, that's a little over the top to me, but he's saying what we're all thinking.
And probably the 5 prior lawyers have written stuff that's similar, so he's just adding to the same song.
Well, how much time is a client entitled to?
How much what?
What's
time
wrong?
of their attorney?
I agree with her. You want
You
your
have
lawyer
to zealously represent.
Yeah, it's
right,
an
but she
ethical-
wants more
Yes.
time.
No, listen, I'm sorry, because we've all had clients that say we don't give enough time, and we have to just do what's necessary. And that's important for us to define, not the client.
Is that an hour a week? 2 hours
No.
a week?
There's nothing wrong with her wanting a lawyer full time. I mean, everyone wants, the more time a lawyer can spend on your case, the better your chances are of success. So there's nothing wrong with her wanting that. The question is,
Well, she's getting a free one.
right, that's the question. How much time does she get when we're all paying for it? You get enough time to do a good job.
And really,
That's
the
it.
judge is concerned about moving the business and closing the case. And I'm kind of surprised that the judge hasn't taken a more stern position. I suspect it's because of what lawyers have written the judge and said, hey, this isn't like a normal person complaining about a lawyer. This is a really extreme set of circumstances. But at some point, a judge is going to try that case, lawyer or not.
And this is not, the defense here, we believe, is going to be some form of like battered woman syndrome, something like that.
Listen, I would be on your side on this one. Good luck.
Yeah, I don't think
Good
she's
luck.
got much luck, but there's going to be a defense presented that she was the victim of some alleged
There's
beatings
just
and domestic
no
violence.
way.
And the accident, and she passed out and she was asleep. And who would have thought that someone's going to suffocate inside of a suitcase? I mean, yeah, the video kills it.
Yeah.
Kills it.
Well, let me ask you this: how many different defenses is someone entitled to? Because first she said they were playing hide and seek. Then you see the video and she's taunting him. Then she says she doesn't remember, and now it's battered women.
Listen, we can have 5,000 defenses.
You got 12 jurors,
Should the
right?
jury know about all the prior ones?
No, the prosecution has that burden of proof. Remember, we're just the guy throwing the arrows to see what sticks. So we can do 42
And you just
different
need
ones.
one juror to buy one of the defenses.
So you guys have no obligation to the truth.
No, we have an obligation with clients. And by the way, this segment's brought to you by Don't Talk to the Police. Come on.
But she has to call the police. I mean, she didn't call them initially. She called her ex-husband first.
Also, don't videotape yourself doing stupid things.
Yeah.
That's like rule number
Or how
one.
about just unzipping the
And let them
suitcase when
out.
some's begging for their life?
And show him the door if you don't like
you should
him.
do.
Yeah, it was obviously there were problems. They had a history, these two. It was a toxic relationship. It was also a relationship where I think they both enjoyed to be under the influence.
I don't see anybody voluntarily getting into a suitcase.
How does he get in? Is that a big issue?
Yes, because that's the thing. I don't see her wrestling an adult male into a suitcase.
What if it's a goof? Like, hey, let's see if I can fit in there.
That's the much better question. Or what if it's something that we're doing for some other reason, or if there's something, there's
How
unexplanation.
important is it for the
burned.
jury to understand how the circumstances under which he got in the suitcase?
It's just a piece. It's just
It's
a
the one
piece.
piece. So is intent. I mean, I know the word intent gets used in 100 different ways, but did she intend for him to die? You know, I understand this transfer intent. She could have her not letting him out equals intent. But, you know, there's intent.
Well, her
and there's
taunting
intent.
him, I
There's
mean-
intent with 13 stab wounds to your mother, and then there's intent by playing a joke and saying, he's saying he can't
There's
breathe.
intent calling the husband first and not calling, or the ex-husband, excuse me, and not calling 911. There's a lot of smelliness to this case.
Is there any mitigation that she was under the influence? Does that help her at all?
Like I said, good luck. I don't think
Depends on
there's
who's on the
anything here.
jury.
Yeah,
Right, you people on the
voluntary
jury?
intoxication is not traditionally a very good defense.
Not legally, but you have people on the jury that are going to say, you know, I could see maybe being in that position, right? Somebody on the jury has done some stupid stuff.
This one rises up to pretty stupid.
Yeah, and that's where the vagarity is you never know which juror is going to connect with some part of that case and go, man, y'all ain't going to believe this, but there was this one time. Next thing you know, the jury's like, man, makes sense.
All right, we shall see. Friday, back in court.
On February 24th, 2020, there was a crisis at Sarah Boone's Winter Park, Florida home, prompting her to call 911.
My boyfriend is dead. My boyfriend and I were playing last night, and I put him.
Sarah.
Now for what's trending in true crime, here we go again. Looks like the woman who's accused in the suitcase murder trial needs another attorney. This time, apparently Sarah Boone didn't ask for her lawyer to be removed, but her attorney, Patricia Cashman, made the request herself after a hearing last week that we brought you live, where Boone asked the court to have the attorney be nice to her.
The reason why I'm here is to hope that she will come in with a gentle, softer side and actually listen to what it is I'm saying and see the bigger picture other than what's the one avenue that she keeps going down. There's other ways to win and more than one way. I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do, but I'm not saying that I'm trying to remove her. I'm just trying to ask you, please, forgive me for having to ask you for this. If you could please let her know, please, to just be nice to me.
Yeah. This lady's impossible, isn't she? And here's the victim, her boyfriend, Jorge Torres. Let's not forget that he is the victim in this case. And she's accused of doing something really heinous. She's accused of zipping him up in a suitcase and taunting him while he was begging her to let him out. He died in that suitcase. And now we're wondering, with Sarah Boone's 8th attorney, presumably being let off the case, will this case ever go before a jury? Let's bring in our power panel. Want to welcome in entertainment reporter Kinsey Schofield, and still with me, criminal defense attorney and former prosecutor Franz Borchardt, and professor and retired NYPD detective Mike Alcazar. Great to see you all. Kinsey Schofield, this is a case in the true crime community, as you know, that has everybody talking. Your thoughts on when enough is going to be enough and when we're just going to get to trial with this lady?
Oh, I mean, I'd have to call a psychic. I'd have to call Miss Cleo. She is so wildly spontaneous. It does feel like she's just trying to stall and just trying to create as many problems as she can because she doesn't want to have to face reality. I also think she's just a very difficult person to get along with. But you're right. Everybody is like, when is this going to trial? They're ready to follow along and they're eager to see this, to see some movement here. So, I mean, your guess is as good as mine, girlfriend.
I know, Kinsey. I like what you said, get a psychic involved. And Franz, let me go to you. Regarding the judge, is it time that maybe the judge says, you know what, Ms. Boone, all of these lawyers, all 8 of them can't be that bad. Perhaps the problem is you.
So what the angle is and what's inevitably going to happen is she's going to represent herself. That's the angle we're approaching, because here's the thing. If you don't get along with one indigent defense attorney, that happens, right? That's a thing.
it's not necessarily Burger King where it's your way right away, but that does occasionally happen. So it does smell like we're approaching. She's going to have to represent herself or accept what she gets. And look, the bigger issue is this: play stupid games, win stupid prizes. And I feel like she is at the big roulette wheel playing the biggest stupid game ever. She's had attorneys that are very capable who absolutely would have fought for her, and she has time and time again hurt herself by not having them. And now finally we're getting to the point where this attorney is like, I can't represent her. So I think she's going to end up representing herself.
Right. I think you're right, Franz. I think at this point, if I was that judge, I know what I would do. I would say, enough, Ms. Boone. You're not satisfied with anyone. We're not wasting any more time. Since you think you know better than everybody else, you represent yourself, and let's see how that goes. I think you're right, Franz. I think you're right. Detective Alcazar, let's talk a little bit about, the facts of this case. She created the best piece of evidence for the state of Florida by filming that, by taunting her boyfriend. It was so sick and sinister, that video we've seen around the world. I don't know what she wants from these attorneys. Does she think like they're going to be magicians and just poof, make that piece of video vanish?
Yeah, I wouldn't want to be the attorney in this case. The evidence is there. She filmed herself. It's all over social media. It's all over the news. It's a clear-cut case, and she's going to be found guilty. And like your other guest said, I think it's just a stall tactic, or maybe she's hoping for mistrial. I don't know, but it's not looking good for her.
No, not at all. She is just, in my view, she seems impossible. I think all of those attorneys deserve medals for tolerating her for the time that they did, and they tried their very best to give her the best defense under the law. We'll leave the Sarah Boone case there for now.
On February 24th, 2020, Sarah Boone and her boyfriend George Torres were spending an evening together at Sarah's home. The couple had a bit of a tumultuous past. Both had been arrested on domestic violence charges, but they always seemed to get back together. On this night, the two were drinking. But what happened next is almost inexplicable. George got inside of a suitcase that was then zipped shut. Why and exactly how he got into the suitcase is not 100% clear, but what is clear is that at one point he wanted to get out. He pleaded with Sarah to open the suitcase, but she refused. Instead, she turned on the video camera on her phone and started to record as George begged for his life. Still, she refused to unzip the suitcase. Then the following morning, she eventually called 911. She said she and George were playing hide and seek, and George ended up in the suitcase. When police responded, they found George dead. Sarah has been charged with second-degree murder. It's the trial that may never happen. It's been scheduled and rescheduled and rescheduled again, as 8 different attorneys have tried to represent her. And now she's sent out a flyer trying to get someone to be her lawyer. What is going on with Sarah Boone, and will this trial ever happen? We'll take a closer look as we investigate the suitcase murder trial.
I'm Vinnie Politan. Thanks for joining us. This story's been with us for quite some time, but I want to begin and talk about the victim in this case. His name is George Torres. And the end of his life was absolute torture. It was excruciating the way that he died. And this is a story that is hard to understand how it could even happen. But he's inside of that suitcase. And as he's inside that suitcase, he is literally begging for his life. because the woman who purportedly put him inside there is the one holding the phone camera, recording this and taunting him. And he's saying, I can't breathe. No, really, I can't breathe. Let me out. Now, they both were drinking that night. But where's the humanity in this? For this man to die that death, and we've had experts on to talk about that, it's excruciating. So what has happened in this case? And to me, there's more happening here, right? Like, this is the case that, will it ever go to trial? We go back and look at the timeline of what's happened here. It was February 24th, 2020, right in the beginning of COVID, that Torres was suffocated to death inside of that suitcase. The accused, Sarah Boone, has had 8 different attorneys. 8 different attorneys who have walked away from this case. 8 attorneys who came out and said, yeah, I can do it. I'm a defense attorney. This is what we do. But they couldn't do it representing her. The next hearing in this case is scheduled for August 5th, and the trial is now set to begin on October 7th. So what has happened here? Sarah Boone, because of her behavior, has really turned this into almost like a circus-like atmosphere with this case. So today she was called into court for a hearing, and she seemed a bit confused about why she was there. Check this out, courtesy of Fox 35 in Orlando.
I am thoroughly confused. Was a notice ever put online for this or mailed to anyone? I don't even know why Mr. Lane is here. I don't know why I'm here.
Well, ma'am, you are now representing yourself, and previously you had requested to appear at every hearing that was held. As you are now representing yourself, the court cannot have any hearings regarding your case without you being here.
She's now representing herself. Okay, so she's apparently in charge of herself, and the judge wants to go forward with the trial. I just don't know how it happens. Watching her behavior. Now, Fox 35 Orlando also captured this moment.
If we have to set a hearing, you'll be properly noticed for it.
In the certificate of service.
You'll be properly noticed for it, yes, ma'am.
And will there be a proper notice for today?
Notice was performed last night. I've
Am
already
I allowed to
explained.
ask the news crews how they got here?
No, ma'am, I'm not going to let you do that. They're not under oath. They're not a party to this action right now.
It's wrong and it's unfair.
You're certainly entitled to that opinion.
She's not stupid. She's not stupid. I mean, that's been clear throughout all of this, but will this case ever happen? Let's bring in our guests. Get their take on this. Former assistant state attorney, civil rights attorney, and criminal defense attorney down in Florida, Sue Ann Robinson, also with us, criminal defense attorney. You know him from our coverage of the Karen Reed trial, Joseph Krowski Jr. Sue Ann, this is Florida. This is your territory. What's going on? Does this case go forward with her representing herself? Is 8 enough when it comes to giving her attorneys?
Yeah, I think 8 is more than enough. I think the Bible says, a man who has himself for a client, you know how that goes. So do I think she's stupid? No, but is she a lawyer and can she represent herself on a murder 2 charge? I don't think so. And I think there's confusion right now because the judge doesn't have a way to notice her because he doesn't have an attorney to notice. So the only way to notice her is to get them to bring her to court. And it's caused so much confusion for her, but it's a very simple issue. She doesn't have a lawyer to communicate, the court can communicate with, so he has to communicate directly with her. And the only way he can do that is to bring her to court.
Joseph, apparently now she's going to be given a laptop and 4 hours a day to prepare for this October trial. What are your thoughts about how that's going to work out?
going to be an unmitigated disaster, clearly. She's not stupid, and people that are similar to her typically aren't. It's pretty obvious to me, and you see this a lot in the legal field. When someone cycles through attorney after attorney after attorney, typically they have some sort of a DSM-4 borderline personality disorder, and she fits all the criteria. She's not going to be ready to go forward with trial because she's going to need to put on a mental health defense. It's not a question of who did it or what happened. It's a question of whether or not she's criminal responsible. You know, I think a lawyer has to give her some leeway and put up with things that you wouldn't put up with in another client. Sit there, get some gumption and fortitude, and represent the woman.
Sue Ann, she has been locked up since 2020. So it's not like she's getting away with anything by not being able to hold on to a lawyer. She's serving her sentence seemingly on the front end of this case. How long can it go before it has to go, a trial down in Florida?
Yeah, I think the court is going to decide that. I think 4 years is getting on the gray-haired side of a case, and I think the court has said October 7th, and that's when it's going to start. Also, with her cycling through her 8 attorneys, it's important to note the court said, come rain, come shine, come new attorney, we're going on October 7th. That means if she retains new counsel on October 6th, that attorney is going to have to be ready to go. So she put out her ad for a lawyer saying it's an epic opportunity. I would say a unique opportunity, an interesting opportunity, and definitely a stressful opportunity. I don't know about epic. I reserve that for yacht weekends and maybe holidays with friends. I don't know about an epic opportunity.
So, Joseph, is this a defense? We know it's a strong case against her, but is it a defensible case? And if so, what would an attorney who had the case and staying on the case, what do you do? What are the avenues that you take to try to present something in front of a jury?
Well, in that regard, it's not the most, look, it's a difficult case, but you have one avenue to go down, and you got to present a mental health defense because they've got the video, they've got her statements, they've got the evidence right there. But I certainly think that she needs evaluations, and she could put forward a mental health defense, but a lawyer's not going to be able to do that in 1 month or 2 months or 3 months. It's been 4 years, so what? Let's do it once and let's do it the right way. If I was in Florida, I'd represent her without hesitation.
You know, she watches court TV, Joseph, so you may get a call, and then Sue Ann can put in and represent and let you come in from out of state, right? So the two of you could basically handle this case. I don't know if you want to.
Let's do it.
Yeah, Joseph would actually do it. Sue Ann, so second-degree murder in Florida, what's it really about here? What's the standard? What has to be proven here for prosecutors to be successful in terms of her state of mind? Is there planning having to be involved here?
Well, there is no premeditation on murder too. I think a solid defense for her, aside from maybe a mental health angle, is the inebriated angle. Like, she does not have the proper mens rea to actually have completed the crime. She wasn't in the state of mind. She didn't have intent because she's inebriated. The video clip that is continuously shown of her talking to him inside of the suitcase, you can clearly hear that she's slurring her words. The way that she's speaking is completely different from when you see her talking on the body cam. And, maybe she'll get lucky and have some jurors that have had a few rough nights, maybe not ended in hide and seek in a suitcase, but can relate to falling asleep after having a few bottles of wine. She can certainly go that route. She said she wants a lawyer that's going to maintain faith in their client. And I absolutely think she's going to have a lot of faith to go forward with the defense in this case.
And Joseph, I'll give the final word here. And it seemed from her interrogation, she had no idea that she had recorded this on video. So there's some level of her blacking out as to what happened the night before. Is that relevant in a criminal case?
Sure. I agree. I concur that the inebriation is part of the defense, but those complement one another. The borderline personality disorder that she's clearly exhibited in the inebriation, those complement one another. And I think, look, that's the only avenue. That's what she has to do. So it is a defensible case, but you know, Vinny, statistically, those defenses only succeed on a very small percentage of cases. You just had one in Florida recently, but they're very, very difficult to do.
All right, Joseph Krowski Jr., Sue Ann Robinson. As I said, she's been known to watch court TV. If you get a call and you're making an appearance, please just give us a little tip so we can get it, and it's not just Fox 35 down in Orlando who's getting the scoop.
Will do.
I heard Alan Jackson's trying to jump on board, though, so who knows?
You see, I knew he was going to do that. Thank you both, Sue Ann and Joseph. We'll speak again. When we come back, she has filed a flyer. This is an actual want ad. Inmate seeks attorney. So our own Cody is on the suitcase case tonight, sending this flyer and going to the courthouse to see if anyone wants to take the case.
A former ballerina charged in the death of her husband.
Said that she attacked her and she shot him.
She's claiming that he is the aggressor in all of this.
I see a liar. I see a manipulator. She killed my dad.
Will the jury see her actions as self-defense?
Boy, did she have every reason to fear him.
Or murder?
The Black Swan Murder Trial. Live coverage weekday mornings, 8, 7 Central on Court TV.
There's other ways to win in more than one way. I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do, but I'm not saying that I'm trying to remove her. I'm just trying to ask you, please, forgive me for having to ask you for this. If you could please let her know, please, to just be nice to me and have a welcoming attitude, and things will probably change.
Unbelievable. Sarah Boone wants her lawyer to be nice to her. That was one of the 8 lawyers. I mean, from the beginning, she has been reaching out to the judge, complaining about her lawyers from the beginning. And 8 of them have left the case because they can't get along with her. And she said, well, just be nice to me. And then she wants them to spend all their time on her case. She doesn't quite understand how it works. But she's been serving 4 years already on this. But now she has filed with the court a flyer, which is really like a want ad. Let me show it to you because it's pretty interesting. Inmate seeking attorney, looking for a prosperous challenge, ready for your close-up on national television. Are you zealous with a side of keen? Show the world who you are with your original creativity, extraordinary expertise, and confident ingenuity. Qualifications must include being trustworthy, client inclusion all times. That's a big one for her. Extreme efficiency in listening, because you know what? She's going to talk a lot. Capability of excellence and representation, maintaining faith in client. Epic opportunity awaits. Sarah Boone, inmate number 20005623. Invest in the oppressed, believe. So this is like a want ad, right? Inmate seeking an attorney. So what we did today is we took the flyer and we took our producer, Court TV producer Cody Thomas, who is on the suitcase case tonight. You took the flyer, you headed to the local courthouse, and looking for a lawyer for Sarah Boone.
And Vinny, the best part about this story is that not a single one of these attorneys had heard of this case. So all of their reactions were first genuine impressions. Of course, they had a lot of questions. You know, how did this hide and seek game begin? How did he zip himself into a suitcase? I don't want to spoil too much, so I want to show you their reactions to all the facts of this case that I presented to them today.
Let's take a look.
Have you heard of the Florida versus Sarah Boone case?
I have not.
Have not heard of it.
No, with Sarah Boone. Someone was hit with a suitcase or something.
Let's watch this.
Sarah. For everything you've done to me. Sarah. For everything you've done to me. Sarah. You. Sarah. You. Sarah. Stupid. Sarah.
You think you got the gist of the video? You think you understand?
There's a guy in there, and he's still alive.
He's still alive in this video.
Yeah.
So what are your initial reactions after seeing that? That is Sarah Boone speaking, by the way, the woman's voice.
Okay.
And there's a man in that suitcase. So what are your initial thoughts after seeing that video?
As a defense attorney, I'm
cringing at the fact that the client took a video of this, but does not look great.
My question is, if he's in the suitcase, how did he get zipped into the suitcase? He didn't zip himself in from the inside. Somebody on the outside zipped him in. So for her to be able to say,
you hear me, sweet girl?
I forgot about it, I find that hard to believe.
You're a defense attorney, right? She's gone through 8 public defenders.
It's the client's choice whether or not they want representation by those people. So, I mean, that's her right, unfortunately.
The defense attorney can't make a defendant do something. You have a defendant that has their own idea of what they want their defense to be.
They probably either think that they've got a problem with their case or their client, they just don't want to deal with the client.
Now, this is where we're going to get to the interesting part. A few days ago, she draws up this flyer in jail. I want you to take a look at that.
Well, she's creative, that's for sure.
Just saying it, bottom line, it like I said, I think there's some issues mentally.
You only looked at it for a couple seconds. That's what you got immediately?
Right, immediately.
You know, if that's how she wants to get representation, I think she can do that, but it is not something I've seen before.
Would you take this case as she's advertising for an attorney, or would you?
Oh, no.
You stay 100 feet away from it?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
No chance at all.
No chance. Absolutely not.
I don't know that I would take the case personally. I think it would take a very special kind of attorney to take this kind of case, for sure.
Yeah, I wouldn't touch this with a 10-foot pole.
Why not?
She's crazy.
It's plain as day, simple as that.
Yeah. Looking at this, I can tell this is not going to be somebody that lets me do my job. This is going to be somebody that wants to do the job for me. And if you're not going to let me do my job, I can't help you.
It would definitely be a large hurdle to overcome, I think, given it's on video. You know, you can tell she's in the video and what's going on there. So I think that would be a very high hurdle to beat.
Invent the case, if that's any indication of
the folks who knew nothing about the case, from she's going to want control, right? So maybe the best place is for her to represent herself at the end of the day. But it's going to be tough. What do you see when you look at that flyer? When you looked at that flyer?
Well,
this looked to someone I would hire if I was running for student council again.
Oh, well, I was going to say it looks like a Battle of the Bands flyer, like in the early 90s or something, like a garage band type deal. You know?
Exactly. I mean, she's got time on her hands, right? She's obviously got time. But the other mystery was that she was into court like the night before. You're coming in. We didn't know about it until it happened as well. But this is what we're going to keep our eye on. We're going to keep our eye on. But no way anyone's touching this.
No.
The 10-foot pole. All right.
100-foot pole at that.
Cody Thomas on the case.
Yes, sir.
Thank you so much. You know, when you think about this case, folks, it's been with us for 4 years, and we've been waiting for the trial to happen, and we were asking the question, will it ever happen? Well, it's all because of what's going on or not going on in the mind of Sarah Boone. And on the one hand, it's tragic, right? If someone's suffering from mental illness, it's tragic that she's caught in our system now. But on the other hand, the trial has to go forward. There has to be some sense of justice for the victim in this case, George Torres. As we said, he died a horrible death inside of that suitcase. We've got the video. We're going to play you the video, and then we'll get some analysis from our psychological experts to talk about what does it take to record someone as they're dying and do nothing.
My boyfriend and I were playing last night, and I put him in his case and we were playing, and like kind of hide and seek kind of thing. So I fell asleep and I woke up and he was dead in the suitcase. So I don't know what happened. I don't know what happened.
I can tell you exactly what happened. He died. George Torres died inside of that suitcase because he was left in there. At one point, he's begging for his life, but his girlfriend, Sarah Boone, did nothing, did absolutely nothing while he suffered and was tortured and passed away in an excruciating death. So What Sarah Boone didn't necessarily remember the next day is that while this is happening, she's recording it on her phone. And we have that video. We're going to show it to you right now. It's a couple minutes of video that she recorded. You'll hear her voice, and you'll hear his voice from inside the suitcase. It's tough. It's tough, but it's what happened in this case. I've given you a warning. Let's take a look.
Sarah.
For everything you've done to me.
Sarah.
For everything you've done to me.
Sarah.
You.
Sarah.
You.
Sarah.
Stupid.
Sarah.
That's my name. Don't wear it up.
Sarah. I can't breathe, babe. Seriously.
Yeah, that's when you do when you choke me.
Sarah. 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 Sarah, I can't breathe, babe.
That's on you.
Sarah, I can't breathe.
It's on you.
Sarah.
Real or ransom. Might want to get video for it extra. Because I got this.
Sarah.
Real or ransom.
Sarah. Sarah, I can't breathe, babe.
Oh. That's what I feel like when you cheat on me.
Sarah.
You.
Breathe, Sarah.
Yeah. You should probably shut the f up.
Sarah.
I want to bring in our experts. Joining us, clinical and forensic neuropsychologist, associate professor at Pepperdine University, and author of the book, The New Rules of Attachment, Dr. Judy Ho is with us. Also joining us, psychotherapist and CEO of Life Counseling Solutions, Dr. Janie Lacey. Thank you both for joining us tonight. Dr. Judy Ho, where's the humanity here? What's going on? She's not recording and taunting as he is begging and dying.
What a difficult video to watch, Vinny. But it really shows a glimpse into her state of mind as he was pleading for his life. And you can tell he was really suffering because he could only manage to get out a few short words. Most of it was just calling her name over and over again and clearly communicating to her that he was suffocating. And it would just be seconds before she would even respond. And when she did, it was a chuckle and it was about, well, here's how you mistreated me and this is what it feels like. I understand that there's a lot of resentment and anger in this dysfunctional relationship, but the fact that she basically just sat aside and while he was dying, that those were the only comments she made really shows that the empathy is just not there.
Dr. Janie Lacey, there is history here in this relationship. They both have domestic violence arrests. There are problems that they had. It seemed that night that they were both drinking. There's, I think, an empty bottle of wine that was found there as well. What are your thoughts about that moment and this dynamic and how someone could not just say, okay, the joke's over, you can't breathe?
Well, you said it, Vinny. There's a history here of this toxic dynamic, and coming up until this moment, as we're hearing her record him and watch him suffer, that we have to assume that she was disconnected from the reality of what was really happening and the intensity of her own emotion, of her own resentment, and all the things that she felt justified and as we're hearing the dialogue between them. So as we're seeing that, we're considering that she's under the influence. We're considering the toxic relationship and dynamics and the intensity of emotions and resentment and all the things that she was feeling in that moment, that there was probably we can assume that there was a disconnection of reality, that she's seeing him suffer, but she's only thinking about her own suffering and not necessarily having, as my colleague said, the empathy of what her boyfriend was going through in that moment, because she was only focusing on her feelings and what she went through. And as she was alluding to, them having domestic violence and him cheating on her and these other types of things. So only focusing on the justification of her anger and allowing him to suffer in that moment.
I want to take a look at another video. This is a body camera video outside her home when police respond. So this is the first time she's speaking face to face with law enforcement. Let's take a listen.
We have a puzzle that we started in there. Okay. We've been doing art, trying to take the stuff off the wall to make new art put up there, like having a good time with one another. But we're drinking. We had a bottle of wine last night. Okay. So then it's like, we decided to play hide and seek, right? Okay. So he gets in the suitcase. Okay. Who is this guy? That's my ex-husband, my former husband. He lives here with you guys? No. I called him over here. Okay. Okay. I didn't know what to do. Okay. I didn't know what to do. Okay. So then he came over here. Here, let's talk in private, okay? I called you guys. Mm-hmm. I tried getting your CPR. The problem is I fell asleep. I fell asleep. When did you do CPR? This morning. When I found it. Before you called? Yes. 1 o'clock right now. I tried. I was awake, but I actually got out of the bed at like 12:30ish, whatever. So I came downstairs, and I was like, oh, he's in the suitcase still. And that's when I found him, and I took him out, and I tried doing CPR, and then I called him, and then I called you guys.
Did he get here before the fire department got here?
Who?
Your husband or your ex-husband?
Yes.
Okay. Where does he live at?
Right down the street.
Okay. So you were playing and who did him up there?
I did, but then I fell asleep.
Okay. You're okay. I wasn't here. I'm just trying to figure out what happened.
I fell asleep, so I don't know if he suffocated or like had an aneurysm or a heart attack or what.
What kind of medical conditions does he have?
None that I know of.
Nothing that you know of.
None
You
that
didn't
I
take
know
any
of.
medical?
No. All we had was a bottle of wine. Literally, just a bottle of wine.
Okay.
Doing puzzles, artwork. Then we decided to play hide and seek. Mm-hmm. That's all that happened.
There's a lot here. Dr. Jane Lacey, I'll begin with you. Like her emotions and the way she's speaking, it's very like, I'm not following her. What's going on here?
What I would wonder about her and her history, especially watching this video, is potentially some type of perhaps personality disorder, the instability of emotion, and then to have to be able to call her ex-husband, right? So we also know when people have personality disorders, they have difficult relationships, there's instability of mood, they have strange behavior, these types of things. So as we're watching and listening to her and the disconnect of the time lapse of leaving him in the suitcase and what she was trying to describe as her sleeping and waking up and then calling her ex-husband, it just seems really strange. So my mind would go into understanding and trying to figure out, if there's been a history there for her leading up to this moment, and I would probably lead to some type of personality disorder that we're actually seeing as she's talking to this police officer.
Dr. Judy Ho, as we're watching her here, she knows that he's dead at this point. Like, she knows he's dead. She knows he was locked in a suitcase, but she can't put 2 and 2 together.
I know, Vinny. I mean, when you see the first half of the video that you just showed us, she's kind of almost very calmly just talking about their night before. Hey, it was an innocuous night, had a bottle of wine, playing with a puzzle, started playing hide and seek. And you notice where her emotional tone changed. It was when the police officer said, but it's 1 o'clock. I mean, it's a good question, because she's basically saying, well, this is what happened. And she's saying, hey, it's in the middle of the afternoon now. What took you so long? Essentially, there was a little bit of an insinuation there maybe on the part of the police officer. And that's when her emotions started flying everywhere. That instability that Dr. Lacey mentioned really came out at that moment, right? Then she becomes really disorganized. She sounds like she's already defending herself, right? I was already awake. I just didn't get out of bed until X amount of time. So even though she can't put 2 and 2 together, I think she knows she's clearly a person of interest. And the minute that she feels she's being accused of anything, that's when you see the disorganization. And I have to wonder if that type of display is what's led, in part, all of her attorneys to quit, because they can't really work with her, because they don't know what to expect and they can't organize a defense for her.
I want to take a quick look at one other piece of video. This is from her interrogation when she's confronted with the video that she apparently didn't know that she recorded. Let's watch.
I thought he was okay. Like, I didn't, that you
He's
all.
telling you he's not. He's telling you, Sarah, I can't breathe. He's saying your name and you're like, that's my name, don't wear it out.
Guys, that's how we are with each other. Like, nobody understands our relationship. This whole suitcase thing never happened before.
Would you leave someone else in a suitcase? Would you leave Lucas in a suitcase jokingly? Because it was a joking matter. You put him in there jokingly. Would you leave Lucas jokingly in there? And you love Lucas, right? And you.
I wouldn't do that to him either. I wouldn't do that to him.
So I just.
Well, it's not like, again, I don't think you all understand. Like, it's.
I mean,
that was not my intention.
But,
y'all don't have any idea what I've done for him.
But by your acts, and that's exactly right. You get to the point where you've done so much for somebody and they don't show you any appreciation.
He did.
Not by your words in the video. I don't get that.
Dr. Judy O, you all don't understand is what she's saying. You all don't understand what's going on here. How about that?
Right. Yeah. So that's essentially a classic example of when you don't take any responsibility and turn the blame onto other people. You make them question their actions and their judgment. I mean, I think that the detectives in this case aren't falling for it. But you can see how when that attention gets flipped, the person usually that she would be targeting, now they're put on the defense, right? They have to explain themselves as opposed to her doing the explaining. And just the fact that she's justifying this, saying this is just how we are, this is how you are, you just attempt to murder each other all the time. I mean, what is she really insinuating here? But it's this idea of, oh, you just don't understand our love. Our love is so difficult to understand for the average person and you just don't get it. It's almost like she doesn't still appreciate the true consequence of what happened, which is that she inadvertently took a person's life, inadvertently or consciously.
Unbelievable. Dr. Judy Ho, Dr. Janie Lacey, appreciate your time and your insight. When we come back, we're going to take a look at that want ad poster that she put together, looking for a lawyer. The handwriting, very unique. We're going to bring in some handwriting experts to analyze that when we return.
Most successful true crime TV shows ever.
This is crazy.
Now has a new home on America's original true crime obsession, 48 Hours on Court TV. Coming up next on Court TV.
A former ballerina charged in the death of her husband.
Will the jury see her actions as self-defense?
She killed my dad. Or murder.
The Black Swan Murder Trial. Live coverage weekday mornings, 8/7 Central on Court TV.
And I feel that she is untruthful with me and full-blown prejudiced against me, which I believe adds to her nasty attitude towards me. And I do not trust her. So I have prepared this for you. It's a letter and then a continuation of the letter from the video visit, so you are aware of. And everyone constantly blames me that I am the reason why I am supposedly on attorney number 8, which I am not the reason for any of them.
Sarah Boone in court talking about a letter that she wrote to the judge. She's written a lot of letters, but we've got this 7-page letter, which also had with it the now infamous inmate seeks attorney flyer that she filed looking for someone to represent her. And the one thing about her letters, everything is handwritten. And when you look at the letter and you look at the flyer, very unique. So what can we ascertain? What can we read into her actual handwriting? What does it tell us about Sarah Boone? I need experts joining us tonight. Handwriting expert and author of the book, Sex, Lies, and Handwriting, Michelle Dresbold is with us. And also joining us, handwriting analysis expert Jamie Mason-Cohen. Thank you both for being here. I know you've had an opportunity to take a look at this stuff and go through it. So I'll start with you, Michelle. One thing you were talking about was this opening paragraph of the letter and something with the margin. What should we be looking at? What does it tell us?
Okay, when you look at handwriting, and on the lined paper, you have a left margin. That left margin represents boundaries of society. When she starts out, you can see she starts out, she writes past the left margin, which is normal. However, as the letter goes down throughout the 5 pages, she decides that she's going to disregard that margin. By disregarding the margin, what does that mean? It means I'm disregarding the rules, the boundaries that are set for me. So there it is right there. When you see, now, if somebody only has a teeny piece of, have to write and use the whole paper to get the message across, she has page after page after page. She doesn't have to, use all that space. She decides that margin, or what we call boundary, is not for her. And that's it. If ever you see a sign. So that's what that going through the margin means. And I would like to point out one other thing on that page, if we can put that up again.
Absolutely.
Okay. I want you to look at that. Where's my discovery? I am still waiting for you. That first line. If you look at the word I, as in I am still, there's 2 ways you show yourself. The letter I, which means me, myself, and I. If you look at that I carefully, it's broken into 2 parts. When you see the letter, the personal pronoun I broken, it's an indication of mental illness, that the person is sort of falling apart. You find that in schizophrenics handwriting, you find that in bipolar handwriting, and you also find that in split personality handwriting. Her eyes throughout this whole page, you'll see if you look at it, the I is in 2 separate parts. It's broken. So what is she? She's broken. And it's right there in her letter I.
And that would be very consistent with what she is presenting inside the courtroom. All right, Jamie, you took a look at the top of the flyer, this inmate seeks attorney flyer. As we know, she's gone through 8 who have left the case. What are you seeing here, Jamie?
Well, I'm seeing overall the font is meticulous. It's screaming out, I want attention. There is a certain aesthetic sense to it, but if you also look at the content, it is about flaunting this awful situation to try to gain a certain infamy. She talks about herself as not an inmate. She calls herself oppressed. She's talking about herself as a victim. So if you take this over-the-top flamboyant font and you connect it with the content, which is screaming a narcissistic desire for people to notice her, to be seen, then you have someone who is seeing the world from a delusional standpoint.
Michelle, you also noted something about her signature at the bottom. What do you see in her signature?
Okay, can we see that? Okay. I want you, the handwriting's fairly consistent size throughout the whole script, except for that huge signature, Sarah Boone. I don't know how you pronounce her now, with Boone.
Boone.
Her signature, Boone, I'm so sorry. Her signature is overly large. There was another word, it was surprise, that was overly large. So surprise, Sarah. And that's her message. Her signature is enormous. And what does that mean? It means world, look at me, I'm Sarah, look at me. Now, what else is interesting in her signature are those letter O's. If you see them, they're kind of all loopy. And it's also very loopy in the printed O of her last name. Your O is your communication letter. The clearer, think of it as like a mouth. The clearer and cleaner it is, the more truthful a person is, and the more you can understand their communication. The more junk inside of an O or A means the person is, I don't want to say lies, but let's just say doesn't tell the truth, and they make you can't understand what they're communicating. So those. Can we look at that one more time? I'm going to show you something about a con artist, if I can. Can we look at this?
Yeah, we're going to put it up. You just got to push a couple buttons. This is the signature part, correct? There we go.
Just the same. Another thing, if you look at if you just look at that last name, and you put your hands around everything around it, you couldn't really read it. When you have a name that you think you can read, and you can't, it's not one that's a scribble. You think you can read it, but when you take it out of context, you're not sure what those letters are. That's like, oh, I'm letting you see what I want you to see. I don't know. And can I?
No, we're out of time. Unfortunately, we're out of time here. We will do this again. We absolutely will. Appreciate your time, Michelle Dresbold and Jamie Cohen. Thank you both so much. Before we go, we have a missing child who needs your help. Please take a look at the screen. This is Nyurka Diana Boots Rax. Nyurka is missing out of Coffee Springs, Alabama, only 15 years old. Since July 19th. If you see Nyurka, please pick up the phone, make the call, 911, 1-800-THE-LOST, or you can call the Coffee County Sheriff's Office in Alabama. Numbers on the screen. I'm Vinnie Politan. Thank you for watching. Please don't forget to hug the kids.
Now, this one that I'm about to share is where she's starting to represent herself in court. So
We are standing by in Florida this afternoon, where defendant Sarah Boone is back in court for a motions hearing today.
Boone, who is now representing herself after going through 8 attorneys in just 4 years, is now back asking for more legal help.
Boone is accused of zipping up her boyfriend in a suitcase and then leaving him to die, all while filming large parts of the ordeal.
Now, before we get you back into court, here's more on the case against Sarah Boone.
911, what is the location of the emergency?
It's Monday, February 24th. There's a crisis at the home of Sarah Boone, prompting her to call 911.
Is this a police or medical? My boyfriend is dead. Okay, send a line for the fire department. Do not hang up.
The fire department takes over the call, and for the next few minutes, officials are obtaining critical details about what happened.
Now, tell me exactly what happened there.
My boyfriend and I were playing last night, and I put him in a suitcase and we were playing. And it's like kind of hide and seek kind of thing. So I fell asleep, and I woke up, and he was dead in the suitcase, so I don't know what happened.
Okay, is he hanging from somewhere or what, ma'am?
No, I pulled him out of the suitcase. I tried giving him CPR.
Fire and rescue instruct Boone on how to give chest compressions.
Just keep on pumping. That's all you need to do for me. Keep on pumping his chest for me. I don't need you to stop and talk or anything. I just want you to count out loud for me, okay?
31, 32. Please hurry.
Okay, man, they're getting there as fast as they can, okay?
He's deaf and he's purple.
EMS arrived within minutes and advised Boone that her boyfriend, Jorge Torres, had been down too long and there was nothing more they could do. Boone explained she and Torres were drinking the night before and thought it would be funny if he got inside of a suitcase for a game of hide and seek. The next day, deputies returned and arrested Boone and charged her with second-degree murder in Torres's death. Boone's story about a childhood game gone awry unraveled when investigators say they found video on her cell phone showing Boone taunting and laughing at Torres while he was struggling to get out of the suitcase.
I can't breathe, babe.
Oh, that's what I feel like when you drink on me.
Sarah, I can't breathe, Sarah.
Yeah. You should probably shut the
When police questioned Boone the next morning, she seemed to have no memory of that happening.
I fell asleep. I don't know if you suffocated or if I had an aneurysm or a heart attack or what.
Boone told investigators she only realized her boyfriend was still in the suitcase when she woke up. Still, investigators say her actions add up to murder. Sarah Boone has pleaded not guilty and maintains her innocence.
And is still looking for an attorney at this
That's
point.
right,
Well, actually,
with the flyer.
she's not. She's going to represent herself. All right, following Torres's death, police spoke with Boone about his injuries, which quickly prompted Boone to go on the defensive. So let's take a listen to some of that interview.
This morning we went to his autopsy, and we were informed of some injuries that he has by the doctor. So I want, so he's got scratch marks to his back. I know what that's from. Okay. And it's called a contusion. Do you know what a contusion is? So like basically you're getting hit and then, you know, you get a mark from it. You'll get bruising. Like someone hit you or something like that. It's called a contusion. So he had some injuries to his left shoulder. He had a cut near his like lip. We could see his mouth was a little.
I haven't laid a
swollen.
hand on him.
Okay.
Also too, he fell off my son's bike.
Okay.
So I don't know, and he's notorious for running into the wall or the hall tree.
Okay.
So
Okay. What about the scratches? Because there's also sex.
Yes.
Okay. Because there's also like a scratch on like the back of his neck, like kind of like going, but it's like going straight across.
I have no idea what that's from.
And they're all recent. Like they occurred recently. It wasn't something that occurred post or that occurred a week ago or 2 days ago, 3 days ago. They definitely occurred, you know, the night leading up to when he was.
In all honesty, we have not gotten into it.
Okay.
That's why, like, the only thing I thought you guys were going to ask me about, which I was going to be honest with you anyway, are the scratch marks on his back.
Mm-hmm.
Everything else, I have no idea what it is. No idea what it is. Nonetheless, I've had my son over the house too, so.
Well, your son was there when? When was he last there?
Oh, gosh.
From my understanding, he was there like last Tuesday.
I don't know if it was Tuesday, but yes, he was there last week, so.
Well, we're talking about Sunday.
Yeah.
We're just talking about what occurred Sunday. Because like I said, the injuries they occurred within that time period.
So you're talking about day before yesterday?
Sunday leading into Monday. You called us yesterday at 1, but the incident, you guys were painting and stuff the night prior.
Correct.
So we're talking about Sunday and then into Monday.
I'm thoroughly confused because we had a good time sitting on the back porch, having wine and smoking a couple of cigarettes, and then decided to go inside and literally paint, do puzzles, and play, and listen to music. That's why nobody got out of sorts. This is what's mind-blowing to me. Like, I have no clue. Nobody laid a hand on anybody.
He also had, like on the left side of his forehead, he had basically bruising, and on like his head and skull.
I have no idea.
As if something hit him.
I
considered
not
forced
touched him.
trauma.
I have not touched him. I have not touched him.
Then how would you get those injuries?
Tell me and we'll both know. I have not touched him.
yesterday when we took photographs of your overall body, and they did the buccal swabs, did they go under your fingernails?
No.
Okay. Are you willing to let us
Absolutely.
swab underneath your fingernails?
Go for it.
Okay.
I have no idea, and I don't want to seem out of sorts, but I have no idea. We had a good day.
Mm-hmm.
It was a good day. We've had good days lately, even considering everything that's going on with our jobs and life in general and ex-wives and everything. It's been good. Like, I don't even know where this is coming from.
Yeah,
I
you
don't
said
even
the
know.
last physical was probably, you said, I think, what, a month ago? Where you got the injury, right? You said that was a month ago?
A few weeks, give or take, yeah.
A few weeks. That was the last, like, physical altercation between the two of you? You said a month ago he hit you with a curtain rod.
Yeah, with a curtain rod. That's why I can't believe you guys didn't take that either.
Wow.
Like, we've been good. I don't know if, like, it's since the last time he got out of jail. Like, we've been good, and he's been having his classes and seeing his probation officer, who's amazing. So.
What do you mean by good? What's your definition of good?
The probation officer?
Oh, no, you said you guys have been good. What's your definition?
I've been good. I don't think you all understand. He comes at me all the time. He comes at me. So it's either I flee or try to go upstairs and go to sleep. That's usually what it is. And I don't know if you talked to Brian about any of that, but most of the time when I flee, I go over there. So.
Right, but you're saying that you guys have been good, and when I asked you yesterday, the last incident that you could remember was the curtain rod incident, which you said was a month ago, so.
Give or take.
Right, so what do you mean by he comes after you? Like,
he gets belligerently drunk. Like, I don't know if y'all have looked through my phone yet and seen any of the pictures and the videos that I have taken. And at one point, I started documenting everything.
Okay.
So you all will see in my pictures, bloody fingers, split foreheads, he split my nose. I've got this.
Right.
I don't know if Brian told you about it, where I had to have I had one really bad surgery, but then it got really, 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 really bad, where I had to go like 4 or 5 more times afterwards for them to tend to it. From them poking me in the back of the leg.
Right.
So it's.
Then why are you still with him?
Everybody asks me that. When I tell you guys this, I really love him. Like I do. And I feel like I can help him. Like I feel like I could help him, which I did, because he came a really long way from where he was in Philadelphia to moving back to here and to dealing with everything else that he's been dealing with. I've really helped him. I bailed him out of jail, 3 times. I've gone to every single hearing and every single arraignment, everything that I did for him. Gone to see all his public defenders, go to the state. I've gone to the state. I did everything for him because I'm trying to help him, because I had hope in him. And he was trying. He was really trying. And then he starts to think about things, and I think he gets overwhelmed. And then it's like, the next thing I know, he's drinking. So it's like, oh man, I know where this is going to go. So I'm going to go upstairs and read a book, or I'm going to go for a bike ride, or I'm going to do something else. Where I don't want to drink. I don't want to drink. The occasional wine, whatever, or if it's a weekend, that's when you have a good time. You don't have to wake up the next day. I have to wake up the next day and do things. I have to tend to Lucas. I have to take him to school. I have all this stuff to do. He doesn't know how to, I guess, maintain himself, where I can do 50 things at once and still know the 50 things more prior that I need to get done. He can't process like that. He didn't process like that. So he would literally, not literally, but have smoke coming out of his ears. So the next thing you know, he doesn't want to deal with it. I'm going to go get something to drink. So the majority of the time, I would hang out outside or do something else because I don't want to drink.
Still joining us this hour, criminal defense attorneys Jack Rice, Josh Schiffer. Gentlemen, here's the thing. I'm going to rename Sarah Boone Chatty Cathy, because every time we show something, it's either the body cam where she's talking to the police, it's her interview where she's talking to the police, it's the video where she's talking to the video as she's zipped up her boyfriend. Jack, there's so many different versions and statements she's given. Is there any way she can get out of some type of conviction?
This is going to be very very, very difficult because the state gets to use all of them. And then what they get to do is they get to compare each against the other. I sat listening to that interrogation, and all of a sudden when she says, oh, then I know what happens next. And all I thought was, this is somebody who's tried to, quote unquote, help again and again and again, and he never seems to get it. That must get frustrating after a while, isn't it, Chatty Cathy? All of a sudden, you start thinking of these various ways to prosecute a case like this. And I imagine as the state watched all of these videos, that's exactly what they were thinking about.
I tell you what, I can't even imagine what it would be like if she actually ends up representing herself, Josh. Could you imagine the opening statement? Could you imagine what that would be like? Could you imagine the back? I mean,
She has a lot to say.
We've seen a little bit, right, with Darrell Brooks, but that was different. He was belligerent and, whatever. But she would just go on and on talking to everybody. So here's my question. A lot of people online are wondering, and they're asking this question. Could she really be denied an attorney? We know she's still looking for one, even though the judge said you can't have any public defenders. We know she's still looking for one. Is it possible that really against her wishes, the system, this judge, will make her represent herself provided she can't find another attorney?
They'll appoint standby counsel, but she's foregone, and she's actually already had the ruling about losing public defenders. You have a right to an attorney. No one can force you to use one. And she is the Chatty Cathy. That interrogation is the best example ever of you can't add anything useful to the conversation. Everything you say is going to get turned around. Everything you say, when viewed at a distance, can really look inculpatory. And that's exactly what she's done. She's walking herself into a guaranteed conviction. And I wonder where her brain really is when it comes to what her strategy is. Even people that struggle with what we would consider competency issues or are just out there, they have a belief about what they're doing. And I really don't understand what hers is. She's not trying to stop the trial. She just really appears to not want a lawyer or believes she's going to get whatever benefit by just turning off the lawyer font. And that's not going to happen. This court's eventually going to put her on trial, and I believe the state's going to make quick work of her.
Yeah, what she keeps saying, Judge, is that she can't agree. Like, she doesn't agree with the approach being taken by many of her attorneys.
Right.
She just doesn't agree. Like, she has her own idea of how this case should be handled.
And what does that mean, right? Like
Right,
she
I don't
said,
know what it means.
Yeah, she said, oh, I fell asleep. Well, that's not a defense. You and I were
Right.
talking about this. She says, oh, I don't drink. Okay, we were drinking. Well, intoxication's not a defense. So
Yeah.
we don't know where she's going to go. We do know she's not indicated that she will claim insanity or self-defense as a
No.
true defense.
No, and I know there was one dispute with one of the attorneys. He was looking for a domestic violence person, was having trouble finding someone who could come in and testify about the effect of domestic violence, which maybe could have explained her actions that day. That sounds feasible. to me.
Yeah. And then I wonder, Jack, really quickly, is she someone who simply is so argumentative because it's not being done the way she wants it done that she can't get out of her own way?
Absolutely. I mean, the Sixth Amendment allows the right to counsel, but she doesn't get the right to decide which public defender that she wants and which public defender is what they're going to argue a certain way. She doesn't have that right. The court has already ruled on that issue. So they will have standby counsel basically there, but they won't be defending her. If she goes pro se, and she absolutely has this constitutional right, this is going to be a very challenging trial for everybody else involved. For the prosecution, I've had to deal with this 20 plus years ago. I remember watching judges just sort of turning themselves inside out because they're trying to make sure that every constitutional right is protected. And yet at the same time, some of the things that can roll out of a pro se defendant's mouth, somebody without counsel, can be really extraordinary, and it's very hard to handle and protect their rights at the same time.
You know, I think of Adam Montgomery, and in his case, he didn't even come to court. He didn't even want to be there for his trial versus a Sarah Boone, who I think she will get every word in and is going to be something else to watch.
Yeah.
She won't be quiet.
According to the judge, she forfeited her right to having an attorney appointed by the court. So, we'll just have to see how it shapes up. All right, gentlemen, stand by. We're going to take a break. Coming up, we're getting word that we will have that Sarah Boone hearing at any moment. Believe me, it's on its way in. In the meantime, we're going to preview this finally have that video from the hearing of Sarah Boone. We're going to begin that next, so don't go anywhere. Keep it here on Court TV, your front row seat to justice.
Hey. Welcome back to Court TV Live. Thank you for joining us. I'm Ashley Wilcott here with Michael Ayala. We are switching gears now to the motions hearing that got underway this morning for Sarah Boone in Florida. On the docket today were several motions filed by the defendant ahead of her trial set to begin October 7th, where she will be defending herself.
Now, Boone was arrested in February of 2020 after her boyfriend Jorge Torres was found dead in a zipped up suitcase. Now, Boone claimed that his death resulted from a game of hide and seek gone wrong, but police decided to arrest her after seeing two troubling videos on her phone showing Boone taunting Torres as he struggled to get out of the luggage, exactly saying to her, "I couldn't breathe." Well, we want to take you inside the courtroom now for the start of today's hearing.
Case number 2020-CF2603, the state of Florida versus Sarah Boone, state.
State Castro on behalf of the state. What do you take for the state?
Ms. Boone, raise your right hand to be sworn, please. He is clear to affirm that the testimony you should give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes. Ma'am, good morning. Can you please state your full name and date of birth for the record for me?
Sarah Boone, 10-10-77.
I do see that we have a representative from JACS that's appearing virtually. Sir, can I get your appearance for the record as well?
Yes, Your Honor. Christian Lake with the Justice Administrative Commission.
Okay, very good. All right, we've got a couple of things that we're going to be addressing this morning. The first is the motions, Ms. Boone, that you had made reference the last time I saw you. The court has reviewed all of those motions. I've reviewed also JACS's reply, specifically their response to the motion seeking due process costs that was filed on July 30, 2024. State, have you had the opportunity to review all of Ms. Boone's motions?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, all right. Ma'am, I want to go through each one of them and hear from the state, from yourself, and from JACS. We're going to start first with y'all can be seated, you don't need to stand, thank you. The defendant's temporary motion for reservation of proposed costs to acquire investigator for defendant's defense and trial dated July 18, 2024, received July 29th. That request seeks to reserve any and all costs proposed to be incurred to acquire investigator. The defendant's temporary motion for reservation of proposed costs to acquire all witnesses for defendant's defense and trial dated July 18, 24, received July 29th, 2024. The request is to reserve any and all costs proposed to be incurred to acquire all witnesses for trial. And then defendant's temporary motion for depositions to be conducted per FRCP Rule 3.220 by defendant under pro se attorney title and position ordered by the judge in court dated July 18th, 2024 and received July 29, 2024. I have reviewed all of those motions. All three motions reflect to be determined or TBD with regard to the investigator, witnesses, and deponents. The total amounts are to be determined. How to calculate is unknown. As of the depositions, the date are to be determined, and the amount of transcripts are unknown. Mr. Lake, I've reviewed your response. Do you have anything else to add, sir, with regard to those items, investigators, witnesses, or deponents?
Not really, Your Honor. The only thing is if we can provide Ms. Boone a copy of our pro se packet that has information about, including model motions. We would be happy to send her a copy or to send your JA a copy that you could send to give to her. That might help her for purposes of future motions. But as far as these are concerned, I think our response pretty much outlines what our position was to each of those requests.
Okay, thank you, sir. If you would be so kind to send that to Ms. Barrios, we will ensure that Ms. Boone gets a copy of it. State, do you have any position with regard to those three motions that the court just identified?
No, Your Honor.
Okay. All right, ma'am. So previously, Prison Break Investigations was already appointed to be your investigator. The JAC has no objection to authorizing $5,000 in costs for Prison Break and for $500 for obtaining case-related documents and materials on your behalf. So seeing as there's no objection, even though you were asking for a reservation, I'm going to go ahead and permit that cost to be incurred. With regard to the costs for witnesses and the depositions, you are requesting, as I identified earlier, just to reserve those costs. And as I had said earlier, the motions do not identify who the witnesses are or what the deponents are. So I'm going to deny those motions with prejudice, but that means you can refile them and we can readdress them when you file motions in the future addressing any of those items for ensuring witnesses being subpoenaed or appearing for your defense at trial, or for any persons that you may seek to depose. Because as of right now, I don't know who it is that you were seeking to depose based on your own motions. Do you understand the court's ruling as to those three motions, and do you have any questions, or do you want to add anything?
I would like to add, please.
Sure.
With your delegated due date of July 22nd, for all of my pretrial motions to be submitted, I have yet to receive my discovery, so I was trying to beat that deadline or at least meet it. So I don't know what I'm supposed to ask for, or who I'm supposed to ask for, and again, I have yet to receive my discovery, so I don't even know who it is I need. So I understand for those, so you're telling me at a later date, once I have that information, to revise them.
I'm giving you the opportunity to refile. Yes, ma'am.
Here we hear Sarah Boone.
Here we go.
Yes, here we go. She is wanting to add information there. We're going to hit that pause button. We're going to have more of her hearing right after the break.
Join Court TV's Vinnie Politan with the latest and breaking true crime stories.
Now, let's look at the other side of all of that.
Vinnie Politan Investigates tonight, 9/8 Central, only on Court TV.
Tonight on Closing Arguments, she's parted ways with 8 attorneys. Now Sarah Boone is representing herself. We'll have takeaways from today's hearing in the suitcase murder trial.
Closing Arguments tonight at 8/7 Central, only on Court TV.
All right, back now to Florida and the motions hearing for suitcase murder trial defendant Sarah Boone.
Before we get you back into court, let's bring in criminal defense attorneys Jack Rice, Josh Schiffer. All right, tell us what you think about so far the motion. I mean, I like the way the judge is handling it and talking about, hey, these are the amounts, this is where it's coming from, this is what I'm going to do. Josh.
Yeah, this case is, I just don't even know how it continues to go forward with the way that it is. I'm just sorry, my brain's spinning with something that I just thought about with how she's going to have constitutional challenges, requests, and whether there's going to be a fair trial at all here, given the reliance of the court on her as a pro se.
You know what, Jack? I mean, when she's talking about, Chatty Cathy, she had something to say.
Mm-hmm.
She essentially said that she hadn't received her discovery, right? And again, the judge did the right thing. He says, when we find out what your witnesses are, et cetera, we'll start dealing with costs then. But then to Josh's point, when you start thinking about the logistics of this, her deposing witnesses, figuring out what witnesses she wants to depose, what issues there are. I mean, it is mind-boggling to think that this thing's going to go forward and actually have a trial date and have a fair trial.
Yeah, I agree. I see all of us stumbling here. I mean, when these happen, when somebody fires their public defender, when they fire their private counsel, and they say they're going to go forward on their own, pro se, what usually you will see is this, is a judge will say, look, we're going to hold you to the standard of a lawyer. The thing is what I've seen this for 25 plus years, they never do. They never really can, because part of what they have to do, what judges have to do, is they also have to protect the constitutional rights of the process, the due process rights of a defendant. And so regularly, they're sort of feeding them information at the same time, which makes it even more complicated. So you're watching this and you're saying, you have to stand up for yourself. You need to understand rules of evidence, rules of criminal procedure, how the process works, the investigatory process, what you're going to do when you're making arguments. I've been training people for 25 years how to do this. This is somebody who's never maybe even seen a criminal trial before, and she's supposed to run this herself. This is just a hint of how difficult this will be.
And it's kind of wild because she's under oath. They swore her in before they even got started. So then you have statements she's making under oath, but only for preliminary matters. It's a wild day in court. On that note, let's get right back in for more of the hearing with Sarah Boone.
No, Your Honor, again, the issue here is, with the exception of the mental health expert that's already been approved, there would need to be much more specific motions for these costs. Ms. Boone needs to include essentially what we included in our response. And again, the model motions that we will be sending to will have that information. Without specific information, neither us nor the court can make an informed decision on whether the requests are appropriate.
Okay. Ma'am, the motion fails to identify any specifics. It has to be determined for your expert witness or witnesses. It does not identify the type of the witnesses. It doesn't identify the amounts, and it's difficult for me to identify the particular showing of need, which is what's required for the appointment of that expert. So again, I'm going to give you the opportunity to refile in the future a motion pertaining to any specific experts, identifying the specificity that JACS has requested in their response. So at this point in time, that motion is denied without prejudice, and you'll have the opportunity to refile it. Lastly is the defendant's motion requesting immediate relief to the defendant by appointing effective standby counsel to aid in support and preparation of a criminal case for trial dated July 18, 2024 and received July 29, 2024. The request, ma'am, that you were seeking in that motion is to provide immediate relief to defendant by appointing effective standby counsel to aid in support and preparation of her criminal case for trial. State, do you have any position with regard to Ms. Boone's request for standby counsel?
No, Your Honor, other than what's already been placed on the record in the court's order.
Okay. Mr. Lake, anything over and above what's in your response?
Just briefly, Your Honor, the point we would make, Your Honor, is I think Ms. Boone misunderstands the role of standby counsel. Standby counsel is not co-counsel or assistant counsel to a defendant. Standby counsel is there when in the situation where a pro se defendant who is elected to represent herself decide at some point they want a lawyer, that allows the court to put a lawyer back into play at that point in time. In other words, it's a safety mechanism so that if a defendant who is decided to represent themselves decides at some point they no longer want to represent themselves, the court has a lawyer already in place so that the progress is not delayed. It is not an assistant or a co-counsel. It is someone whose role is consenting not to get involved until the defendant says, I no longer want to represent myself.
Ma'am, the courts had the opportunity to review the case law on this issue. There is no constitutional right to standby counsel as decided by Paul v. State, 152, 7th, 3rd, 635, at pinpoint 641 by the Florida 4th District Court of Appeal in 2014, citing to the Florida Supreme Court case in Jones v. State, 449, 7th, 2nd, 253, at pinpoint 258 from 1984. As the court has determined that you have forfeited and alternatively waived by your conduct the right to court-appointed counsel, the court is not required to appoint standby counsel. That's Brown v. State, 45 7th 3rd 110 at pinpoint 114 through 115, Florida 1st DCA 2010, citing to again Jones v. State by the Florida Supreme Court in 1984. There is no Sixth Amendment right to simultaneously proceed pro se and with legal representation by the Florida Supreme Court in 2009 in Shepherd v. State, 17 7th 3rd 275 and 279. For the reasons that the court identified in its 16-page order previously entered, your request for standby counsel is denied. Do you have any other questions, ma'am, as to the court's rulings this morning?
First off, I did not look at my rights. That was your judgment. And also, I feel that I should have had some type of evidentiary hearing prior to your decision. So I could have better explained myself and you could have had a better understanding. So by you denying my standby counsel, which thank you to him for explaining to me what specifically it is, I don't want to be pro se any longer. So I didn't want to be pro se in the first place. And again, you, in my opinion, unlawfully denied me or didn't even suggest an evidentiary hearing in order for me to avoid or try to go about a solution or remedy that you would understand. So I don't know if it's me either wasting your time or anybody else's time, if it's even an opportunity, or if it's just something that is denied, period.
It is denied, period.
Thank you.
With regard to an evidentiary hearing, that seems to be in the realm of a forfeited inquiry where a criminal defendant is seeking to represent themselves. And I would inquire of that person and have an evidentiary hearing as to the rights and remedies that you were forfeiting and the pros and cons of proceeding representing yourself and the benefits of being represented by counsel. Due to the Florida case law that was provided in the 16-page order, no such evidentiary hearing is required.
My understanding was the hearing, the forfeited hearing, is in regards to competency as opposed to having an understanding before you take someone's rights away.
Forfeited pertains to a criminal defendant's seeking to represent themselves. Forfeited was not applicable to your situation, and that's identified in the case law citations that were provided in the 16-page order.
Yes, I understand. It was the day of that I was explaining most of all of this, and as opposed to prior, so I would know what happened or could happen. So my understanding is one thing, and then the explanation is another. So I'm just confused and feel that I should have had an opportunity prior to all of this to explain myself and to have a better understanding. So now my belief was that the evidence or the forfeited hearing was simply competency. So the evidentiary hearing I thought would be a collaboration of the information of why I wrote my letters in order for you to remove my right to counsel. In my opinion, I felt that it was a type of retaliation by the court because you did not understand or attempt to understand any of my letters that I wrote previously, which was for the intervention of the judge and or the court to avoid any of this with me sitting in front of you presently.
I don't want to be pro se. I don't want to represent myself. You heard her say that. You still think the judge has given her sufficient opportunity with 7 appointed attorneys?
I think he's on solid ground for any kind of appeal.
Yeah.
I do.
I don't know if maybe he'll do a standby lawyer out of an abundance of caution. That's a decision he'll have to make.
I think he should.
Yeah, I think so too, but we'll see what happens. Thanks to Jack Rice and Josh Schiffer for joining us today.
Folks, stick around. Coming up, more from that hearing for Sarah Boone. Keep it right here on Court TV, your front row seat to justice. Welcome back to Court TV Live. I'm Michael Ayala. We begin this evening with the suitcase murder trial. Defendant Sarah Boone is in court for the second time in a little more than a week since the judge ordered her to represent herself after going through 8 attorneys. Well, the judge is hearing several motions that she filed in her criminal case. Now, in one of the motions that she sent to the Judicial Administrative Commission, she asked for a standby counsel, saying she needs someone to help her prepare for her case. Now, in its response to that request, the commission deferred to the court ruling, saying the court entered an order on June 28, 2024, finding that the defendant waived her right to court-appointed counsel through her conduct in this matter. Thus, the court has already ruled on the issue of appointed counsel. Now, that issue came up in court during today's hearing, now along with extending the dates for Boone's upcoming trial. Take a listen.
Ma'am, as identified in my 16-page order, I listened to every audio hearing. I specifically provided dates and times and words that were specifically said at particular hearings involving yourself and prior counsel. I also made reference in the 16-page order to statements that were made in your letters. I promised you, I've read everything in the court file. I've read every single letter, and I've listened to every single audio. That decision was not made lightly, and it took a lot of time to make that determination and that decision, which explains why it was also a 16-page order. That order stands, it remains. The court's not going to revise its findings or its determination as to your forfeiture, and alternatively a waiver by virtue of the conduct identified in that order.
Okay, I believe, in my opinion, the order is erroneous, and after I reviewed your 16-page order, there are quite a few incorrect entries, and some of them are based on perjury by the attorneys. And by you reading and then also listening to the audio, you did not listen to me in any way, shape, or form in order for me to explain myself better, so you have an exact understanding of the particulars of each letter for each attorney.
I'm not going to revisit my prior decision.
I understand. I'm just trying to make you aware that is my opinion.
You, and like we talked about last time, ma'am, you're certainly entitled to that opinion.
Thank you.
All right. My judicial assistant has been in contact with the representative from the Orange County Jail, Sergeant Donald Casey, who is on his way in order to facilitate the transfer of the USB drives from prison break investigations. I do see that Mr. Lane is present. So as soon as he gets here, we'll be able to address that exchange. What we can do while we're waiting for that representative to appear is address some of the things that were identified in the notice of hearing for today, which is kind of a scheduling conference for when we might be setting up certain deadlines. As of right now, the trial is scheduled for October 7th. The trial will be extended from 2 weeks to 3 weeks. So the trial will take place on October 7th, October 14th, and the third week of October 21st. October 21st is not this division's normal trial week. However, the court has obtained coverage for that week so that should this trial proceed into a third week, we will not have to scramble in order to find coverage, and that we'll be able to efficiently proceed with any evidence or testimony on that third week on October 21. Pre-trial was scheduled for September 24th at 1:30. The court typically has its regular trial case managements on that Tuesday. Due to Ms. Boone representing herself and some of the complex issues that may be involved in this case, I'm inclined to change the date of the pretrial so that we might be able to have our own pretrial separate and apart from all the other cases that may be set for that same trial period. My thought would be to move it to, rather than the Tuesday the 24th, to Tuesday the 26th at 9 a.m.
Is that a Thursday?
Yes, sir. That's Thursday.
That's acceptable to the state.
Ms. Boone, that would give you additional opportunity to prepare for trial as well. Are you amenable to changing that date to September 26th at 9 a.m.?
So an additional 2 days?
Correct. You would still have that time to prepare regardless if we had the hearing on September 24 or September 26. I'm just moving it so that we don't have 50 or 60 other cases and I can focus more attention on your case specifically.
Of course.
Okay, all right, so pretrial will be rescheduled till September 26th at 9 a.m. One of the issues that I wanted to address was deadlines for production of the state's exhibits and the defendant's exhibits. Now, I'm mindful, Ms. Boone, that you have not reviewed some of the documents that may have been provided. I know most recently, Ms. Cashman spent 20 hours with you alone going over questionings and reviewing some of the materials. I don't know the breadth and scope of what was reviewed to you, but some of it may have been reviewed to you based on counsel's representations. State, I want to address with you first, because Ms. Boone hasn't reviewed the discovery yet, as to what your position is with regard to assembling or finalizing an exhibit list or your exhibits for trial.
As far as providing a list of the specific items that the state seeks entry of?
Correct. I do want it before pretrial. So let me just kind of lay the map for what the court's thinking. The court would have the state provide a exhibit list and a witness list by X date. Ms. Boone would have the opportunity to look at that list. We would then have a hearing where all of the exhibits would be shown to and provided to Ms. Boone. They would be provided on a USB thumb drive that could be utilized with a laptop at the jail. And then she could view all those exhibits here in open court. And then she would be afforded the opportunity to make objections in writing to any exhibits at a later time by a certain date.
All right, let's bring in our guest for this hour. Joining us to discuss, criminal defense attorney, former prosecutor Eric Faddis is with us. Eric, great to see you. Thank you so much for joining me here on the program. So already we can see the effect of a pro se defendant. We're seeing a trial extended from 2 weeks to 3 weeks. He's talking about moving a pretrial hearing or a pretrial meeting to a different day so that he doesn't have any other cases, so he can really focus in on this case, realizing all the work it's going to take to get this thing rolling on the tracks, ready for trial October 7th.
Yeah, it just shows how consuming a pro se trial can be, not only for the defendant, but for the court, for the prosecution, the witnesses. This is going to be a huge quagmire. And we're already seeing how a lack of defense counsel, Sarah Boone's forfeiture of her right to defense, is going to be a problem. She doesn't know what objections to lodge to these exhibits. She doesn't know what experts to hire. And overall, things are not looking good for Sarah Boone.
You know, it's interesting, I was happy to find out that Prison Break, which is, they're basically investigators that are provided by the state to help out. They're going to be funded, according to the organization that she was petitioning to get funds from. They're going to fund them $5,000. She'll have $5,000 to procure case documents. But again, it goes back to this idea that even when she gets these case docs, he said she's going to get a USB report from the Prison Break folks. The question is, will she even know what to do with them at that point? And that's what becomes a problem. And here's the thing, if I heard it correctly, and you correct me if I'm wrong, she's not even going to get standby counsel unless she hires one herself. The judge was clear. You are not entitled to any court-appointed personnel.
You know, I think that was maybe not the best ruling that the judge could have handed down. Standby counsel doesn't mean that attorney's going to conduct the trial. The attorney's just there to make sure Sarah Boone doesn't completely sabotage this thing for herself, to give helpful pointers, to give guidance. How are those funds going to be used investigatively? An attorney can give meaningful insight into investigative avenues to pursue. And without that input from a legal professional, Sarah Boone is going to be so hard-pressed to even know what to do with any assistance she receives.
What's interesting is there was some question going into this, and I've been talking to some people online, friends who are interested in this case, a lot of people interested in this case, was the judge just trying to sort of shape her up, that at some point she'd come to the realization, I got to step back a little bit. I need an attorney. She said today clearly, I do not want to be pro se, but the judge said straightforward, I am not going to reverse my ruling. Did that surprise you?
It did surprise me. So the judge's role in part is to make sure the proceedings go forth in a fair and expeditious way. And if someone is causing undue delay, the judge does have to kind of try to rein that in. However, we're talking about a right to counsel here, and that's a fundamental constitutional right. And I think Sarah Boone should make another motion in writing to have counsel reappointed and then not fire 7 people who are trying to help her out, because I think that the judge, even despite what he said, could reconsider his ruling out of abundance of caution.
Eric, I got to be honest with you. I don't think he's going to reconsider. I think he was clear. It sounds like he said, I read every word, every letter you sent, and we know there were copious letters, so many letters. He read everything, and I want to get your opinion. It sounded to me like he was done with that whole part of this case. I don't believe at any point, I don't know if he's upset at Sarah Boone or he's pretty much convinced that this is the way it needs to go, but I think he has pretty good cover in terms of any kind of appeal when he went through or allowed her to go through 7 attorneys before reaching this point.
I mean, no question. When you have right to counsel as an indigent person, someone who is in custody, you get appointed a lawyer, but it doesn't mean you have a right to just any counsel you want. If you don't like the public defender, you can just shop around and get another one and another one and another one. That's not going to fly. And the judge really did give her, sometimes judges give a bit of a tongue lashing, like you said, to sort of have a pro se party shape up in court. But the judge would be taking a risk, especially if he does not at least appoint advisory or standby counsel to kind of give Sarah Boone some pointers through this extremely complicated legal proceeding that she's about to go through.
Yeah, I'm not sure unless that comes out of her pocket. Any attorneys are going to walk through that door to help Sarah Boone in this case. All right, Eric, stand by. We do need to take a break. When we come back, the issue of discovery of evidence is addressed. We'll bring that to you when Court TV returns.
For TV fans, you demanded it. Here we go, do it. So now you're getting more true crime at nighttime.
Oh my God, oh my God.
48 hours on Court TV tonight, 7/6 Central on Court TV.
Tonight, on closing arguments, she's parted ways with 8 attorneys. Now, Sarah Boone is representing herself. We'll have takeaways from today's hearing in the suitcase murder trial.
Closing arguments tonight at 8/7 Central, only on Court TV.
We're continuing our coverage in the suitcase murder trial in Florida, where defendant Sarah Boone was in court today for a hearing on several motions that she sent to the court. She's now representing herself after the judge refused to appoint her another attorney after her 8th attorney withdrew from the case. Now we're bringing that hearing to you. It took a while for us to turn that tape around, but we have it now. Here, during this part, they're discussing discovery.
A later time, by a certain date.
I guess one of the concerns would be that if the state identified specific items that we would seek entry of, depending on the course of the trial and the questioning, there may be other items that have already been disclosed in discovery that may necessitate being entered in, would potentially not be part of this original witness exhibit list. Items that were in the discovery, but if that makes sense.
That does make sense, yeah. And I understand what you're saying. And that seems to be more of a fluid situation as to what may happen at trial, right?
Sure. I don't imagine the court's intent would be for the state to just produce the exact witness lists that have already been sent in discovery and just make a notation of every item of evidence. The idea would be to try to pare down.
That's exactly the idea. Now, obviously that wouldn't foreclose you if something was produced in discovery and something that would not be relevant or admissible at a certain stage of the trial, but maybe later became relevant or admissible due to something that happened or something that was said. I would not foreclose the state, nor would I foreclose Ms. Boone from attempting to move that piece of evidence into evidence for the jury to consider. But it would be almost like a civil conference where you and opposing counsel would go over what your exhibits are prior to proceeding to trial. And I think that's important to do that so that Ms. Boone has the opportunity to view those in court so that's on the record as to what she's reviewed, and then give her the opportunity to provide any objections, if any, to any of those exhibits. And again, I wouldn't foreclose you if you want to use items A, B, and C, and that's all you intend on using. I don't know what you intend on using. I don't know what evidence you have. If you only want to use and only show A, B, and C, but are saving D, E, and F for later, depending on what happens, I won't foreclose you from readdressing D, E, and F. It's just an opportunity to address what it is you think you're going to be seeking into evidence at this time.
So essentially,
go ahead, sir.
So I think we could accommodate that if we could go around September the 1st. for that, and then that would give her an opportunity to review that USB and lodge any objections, and then we could potentially address those objections, and go from there.
Okay, and that would be September 1 to have the evidence viewing, for lack of a better word, or for the list to be provided?
For the list and the USB.
Yeah, we're going to make this work for an October 7th trial date, Judge. I think September 1st is probably about the right time frame to have this in-court hearing to begin lodging those objections if she has any. My next question is, are you expecting the physical evidence to be brought here into court by a CSI so that she can potentially open it? Or are we just talking about digital evidence and giving her a list of the physical items?
If there's physical evidence that's sought, I want her to have the opportunity to review it.
And we should be looking at the top of the month for September so that we can get this done.
Okay, all right. Ma'am, do you understand that what it is that I'm discussing right now, so that you have the opportunity to review the evidence that the state may be seeking into evidence in your trial?
Is it my understanding that they will supply me with a USB drive and then I am to review it while in court?
No, ma'am. So it's kind of a two-step process. So anything that's digital, that's not forensics or CSI or something that's tangible, will be provided to you on a USB drive. We also will have a hearing where all of the evidence, including any digital, electronic evidence, or any tangible evidence, CSI materials, will be shown to you in court, played to you in court, so you have the opportunity to review it here as well. Anything else will also be given to you on a thumb drive for you to review at your leisure based on the hours of 8 to 4 by the laptop at the Orange County Jail. And then we will have a deadline after we have this evidence viewing for you to identify in writing any objections that you have to any of the evidence that's been provided by the state.
So it's not a matter of any type of confidentiality. It is all done in the courtroom with everyone?
It would be in the courtroom, correct?
Are there going to be news cameras on the top of it?
That's something I need to address. I do not want, because our jury pool is going to be coming from Orange County, I have concerns about the media's presence in the evidentiary viewing. So I may have to enter an order which would prohibit media access for the purposes of that hearing due to the nature of what is being produced and reviewed, so as to further prevent intimate details of the case being released prior to trying the case.
I understand that, Judge. Ms. Boone, not to turn the page completely, but I think it's pertinent to this discussion, has indicated through some counsel that had met with her recently that she wants to talk to the state out of the jail. And I was going to discuss that at the end, but perhaps to not waste the court's time, I don't know about bringing physical evidence out to the jail, but as far as the digital evidence, which will include autopsy photographs, which will include crime scene photographs, which will include videos, perhaps a different suggestion, especially since she has an investigator from Prison Break, is that we identify those files that we intend on introducing at trial so that they can review that digital evidence on their own in the jail, and we're not publishing all the digital evidence here in open court.
All right, Boone's trial is scheduled to begin October 7th, and the judge actually extended the trial from 2 weeks to 3 weeks because she's representing herself. Let's bring back in our guest still to discuss, criminal defense attorney, former prosecutor Eric Faddis. And Eric, I gotta say, I gotta chalk one up there for Sarah Boone. She made an interesting comment, and the judge sort of took notice of it and said, I may have to exclude cameras during any kind of evidentiary hearing, not to poison the jury pool. And she raised that issue. She said, what about confidentiality during that evidentiary hearing? That's what any good attorney would have said.
Yeah, I mean, every now and again, she's going to make a decent point, and that's helpful for her. But there are so many things she's potentially missing on this. And I just, when they do this discovery hearing, this evidentiary viewing, it's just going to be extremely difficult. You know, my good friend Joey Cohen, as brilliant as he is, if he went to an evidentiary viewing, he would have no idea what to do, what to look for, what objections to potentially write down. And so those things are going to be difficult for Sarah Boone, a non-legal professional.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Now, you're a former prosecutor. You heard the prosecutor there talking about the way he would handle things. I don't know if you've ever had an opportunity to be in court or with someone who represented themselves, a pro se defendant, but how does that change, do you think, the prosecutor's approach to this case? I mean, they have to sort of be very careful themselves.
Yeah, I mean, well, first off, if I was the prosecutor, I wouldn't be wearing a black trench coat in this Florida courtroom. What is he, like a Batman character? That's a very bizarre outfit. But yes, it absolutely changes things in the sense that you've got to kind of be overly cautious. You've got to kind of give the benefit of the doubt, make accommodations so that if there is a conviction, the reviewing court cannot come back and say, oh, this prosecutor went to lengths to deprive this pro se client of their rights. You kind of have to err on the other side of trying to help out the defendant, which is a weird position to be in as a prosecutor.
Yeah, and it's stressful for everyone involved because everyone has to sort of walk on eggshells in that way, making sure that they're really preserving her rights as a pro se defendant. Now, here's the thing. She had a number of attorneys. I think based on some of her letters, she was always worried about the amount of time they were giving her, but there was also issues with the defenses. She felt like they were telling her what defense they thought would work. She necessarily didn't agree. Now, she's charged with second-degree murder, and quickly, I'll just read it. Basically, doing something so dangerous that it's reasonably certain to cause death. There must be some ill will or spite. What do you think is her best approach? Now, she's been claiming this idea, I was drinking, I didn't know that he was going to. That's not going to work. We know that. So where should she go with her defense?
There are a number of avenues that she could consider. One thing that's been successful for some defendants is a battered spouse syndrome type of defense. I know there are allegations of domestic violence on both sides of this relationship, but I don't know if she's been able to retain an expert to talk about that and explain it to the jury. There are also defenses like impaired mental condition, where intoxication can play a role in preventing the defendant from forming the necessary mental state in the case. There are mitigation specialists for if she is convicted that a defense attorney would be enlisting now. I have no evidence that she's doing any of those things, which is going to be make things just that much more difficult in an already hellacious case in terms of the allegations.
You know, one of the motions that were filed in this case by one of the defense attorneys when he was seeking to get out, she didn't seem to like this idea of this domestic violence defense because he was saying, look, I'm looking for this domestic violence expert to come in. He was having a hard time finding one to be able to come in and talk about the effects of domestic violence, what effect it might have had on her actions in this case. But she didn't necessarily like that defense. That's surprising.
It is surprising, and it sort of goes to what you were saying earlier, Michael, how, oftentimes in a lawyer-client relationship, the lawyer is like, hey, these two options are viable. This third option is not from a legal perspective. And the client says, oh, well, I disagree with you. I want to go with the third option. And so there's a fundamental disagreement between the lawyer and the client, which just erodes the attorney-client relationship. And it sounds like those disagreements have arisen during her discussions with her former 7 or 8 attorneys, however many she said.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think the best approach, if I look at this case as a defense attorney, is trying to get that second-degree murder to a manslaughter, right? If you can get it there, I think that's a win. She's probably not seeing it that way. She's probably saying to herself, I didn't do anything wrong. I didn't mean any of this. I should be walking out. I shouldn't be in any kind of jail. And that might be part of the problem here, getting them to understand that, nah, with that tape and that video, you did something wrong, and they don't want to buy it, and that's what causes some of the problems. Anyway, Eric, stand by. I do want to take a quick break. Now, when we come back, the state continues to address issues of evidence that could be presented in the case. But first, we do have a programming note for you. We don't want you to miss the premiere of Vinnie Politan Investigates tonight at 9 p.m. Eastern. Every weeknight, Vinnie takes a deep dive into the true crime stories making headlines across the nation and asks the hard questions. Tonight, Vinnie takes you inside the investigation into the Idaho student murders and the case against Brian Koberger. Kaylee Gonsalves' parents join Vinnie live. Don't miss the premiere of Vinnie Politan Investigates right here on Court TV. Welcome back to Court TV Live. I'm Michael Ayala. We want to turn back to the suitcase murder trial hearing in Florida. Defendant Sarah Boone was in court today for a hearing on several motions. The judge has extended her trial from 2 weeks to 3 weeks, and it's set to begin on October 7th. Now, we've been covering today's hearing. Right now, they're addressing some of the evidence that the state plans to show in court.
That should allow her the opportunity to lodge any potential objections, such as duplicative or any other objections she may want to raise to autopsy photos, so on and so forth, without exposing all of the digital media to the public. As far as the physical evidence, the state doesn't have any real concerns about the media covering that. She can open those exhibits, or somebody with scissors can open those exhibits for her if there are any exhibits she wishes open in the witness box where it's concealed from the media's eyes. So those are my suggestions, and then later we can turn to her request and put on the record how we would go about going out to the jail and meeting her.
The only concern that I have with that is I don't have a record as to what it is that she reviewed.
My suggestion would be that because this is in the context of plea negotiations potentially, I would be out there, Mr. Cacciatore would be out there, and our investigator would be out there, and we would record it. The conversation that we have, of course, and that would all be protected because it would be in the spirit of plea negotiations under the evidence code. And then we can all file in writing, the state can file in writing, these are the videos that we are going to use. These are the particular photograph numbers from the crime scene and from the autopsy photographs that we're going to use. And then we can have the defendant sign off on that as well, so that it's documented as to what was told that she would be facing at trial. And either she can review it with her investigator, or she can review it with us, being present, and then that way the digital evidence is now in the open.
Okay. Ms. Boone, what are your thoughts on that?
I'm a little lost. So it's an option of reviewing what the state has with my investigator and then be able to come with the objections and everything.
That is correct.
I'm unclear on having all of my evidence being in sealed bags and for me to be able to inspect them to be here in the courtroom. I don't know how the attorneys have done any of this prior, but I don't believe that it was in the courtroom. So I'm just trying to protect myself against the media. I'm not sure at this point what is even suppressible that it's available on the internet. But at the same time, though, it is my understanding that I should have some right to privacy in reviewing my the evidence. So I didn't know if my investigator and I are able to collaborate prior and view and then come to court with everything finalized and ready to go with answers.
I'm certainly going to give you an opportunity to meet with your investigator to address it. The question is just the method of how to do it. The state's proposal is digital. They would meet with you, identify specifically digitally what videos, what photographs they intend on utilizing, and anything that may be physical, CSI, et cetera, would be addressed here in open court.
Just so the court and the defendant understands how physical evidence viewing would operate normally, the defense attorney and or her or his investigator would come out either to the sheriff's office or OPD's evidence center, whichever agency, and they come and view it. But it's done in the presence of the state, it's done in presence of law enforcement, it's done in presence of the CSI for the chain of custody. So attorneys don't get privacy when they're reviewing the physical evidence either. So that wouldn't really be any different than if she's doing it in the witness stand or wherever we deem suitable in the courtroom.
I think that's the most appropriate way to have the opportunity, ma'am, to review the evidence. I can't release that evidence to Mr. Lane to bring to the jail for your review because of the chain of custody issues concerning some of the physical evidence. So CSI would have to be here just like an evidence viewing at the sheriff's office or elsewhere where counsel just identified. And I cannot bring you anywhere else other than here, and I can't release you to anywhere else. So I think the only solution that we have is to have the evidence viewing here with regard to any of the physical evidence.
Why is it that I can't be transported anywhere other than here?
Because I cannot make a record anywhere else of what you saw or what was reviewed. The only opportunity for me to make that record is here in court.
What did prior attorneys do?
That was already identified by the state.
I know I'm trying to keep up with everything. What was the answer, please?
So an attorney who's doing an evidence view would come out to the law enforcement agency's evidence warehouse, for lack of a better term. And then in the presence of the state attorney, the CSI, and the lead detective, they look at the package, and if they deem any particular package worthy of opening and examining, they can do that. We can have the CSI bring butcher paper here so that any particular item can be opened, put on fresh butcher paper, and then changed out between exhibits so that there's no contamination. And then you can examine it. If Mr. Lane or any other representative from his organization is here, he will have the opportunity to photograph those exhibits once taken out of the packages. And that's essentially how an evidence viewing is conducted.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And again, please, would the media be involved in that?
That's a conversation that I need to see if I can exclude them from participation or viewing that proceeding. There are rights where the media has to view proceedings.
All right, so clearly the procedure for viewing evidence has to change for an incarcerated pro se defendant. That's what they're discussing. Also, Sarah Boone wants to limit some of the media coverage of her case. She'll address that with the judge when Court TV Live returns. Defendant Sarah Boone was in court for a hearing today to address several motions. Now, the motions have included a request by her to have some of the costs of her expenses and her defense covered by the court. Well, now she's asking the judge to keep the media out of some of those hearings.
In court, but due to the sensitive nature of what may be being discussed or viewed, I need to see if I can prevent media access. So without doing a little bit more further dive or research in that, I don't know if I can make that call at this time.
Yes, I have not heard of a case where the evidentiary hearing has been televised. So if you could please look into that, because I disagree with the media being involved in that.
I understand your position, and again, for the reasons that I stated earlier, I'm trying to prohibit as much as I can from dissemination to the public, especially some of the exhibits that the state may be seeking to utilize. We are going to go ahead and set the evidence hearing. The first is Sunday. September the 1st is a Sunday, and that is Labor Day. The court would be setting a hearing for Tuesday, the 3rd at 9 a.m. to have the physical examination here in court. At that time, in the USB drive or the after our viewing here in court states at your position to then have that meeting with Ms. Boone and her investigator and your investigator under the plea negotiations or settlement discussions auspices to review all of the digital and identify what it is specifically.
We are happy to defer to the defendant's wishes on that. And I wanted to have that discussion. It seems like we're turning that discussion. So I'll leave it in Ms. Boone's court. My indication from one of the attorneys that she had discussed things with said that she wanted to have a conversation with us. And so I'm offering that up. In the past, with female defendants at the Orange County Jail, there are classrooms, or at least one classroom there, where we could arrange to meet. It would be a big enough room for 4 or 5 of us that would need to be there. And then we can discuss that, whatever it is she wants to discuss, and it would be recorded. And again, those portions of the conversation that are about plea negotiations and the evidence and whatnot in the trial, I believe under the evidence code would not be admissible to be used against her. And I can leave it to her when she wants that to happen. We can make arrangements to try and accommodate that. It should not take us very long at this point, given the age of this case, to select and identify which digital evidence exhibits we're going to use. It's simply a matter of getting rid of duplicative and irrelevant photographs from the scene and the autopsy. And I believe the videos won't be too hard to decide which ones to use. And I don't know that there's a whole lot of other digital evidence.
Okay, all right, ma'am, do you have a thought on when you would like this viewing to take place at one of the classrooms at the Orange County Jail under the concept as identified by the state?
So this meeting is separate. This is prior before everything else.
What I would envision, to not waste anybody's time, is we can go out there and have this discussion. If there is a discussion to be had about plea offers, one of the other topics was other matters, so that's kind of ambiguous. I'm not sure what other matters are. And then also we can let her know and probably provide the court in writing the list of the digital evidence that we seek to introduce. And then that way, if she wants us to review those digital evidence items together with her in the presence of everybody, we can do that. Or we can let her, with the list of the digital evidence that we plan on introducing, review that as many times as she wants by herself and or with Mr. Lane.
I understand. So would I be leaving with the digital evidence today, or how soon may I receive that?
So the state needs to assemble that. So my thought would be to have that meeting, ma'am, on the 3rd of September. So we would have a hearing at 9 o'clock in the morning where the physical evidence would be reviewed here in the courtroom. As soon as that evidence was finalized and reviewed, the state with their investigator, yourself with your investigator, would then meet that afternoon at the Orange County Jail to address, as the state has identified or spoken about, any settlement negotiations, plea offers, and under the other category to address what the digital exhibits are. They would provide you those on a USB drive, and they would identify for them specifically what it is that they are seeking for you to review at that point in time and have the ability to review it afterwards.
We're happy to do that beforehand, and I just want clarification. By providing her the USB with all the narrowed down exhibits out of discovery, are we providing it to Mr. Lane? How are we physically?
It would have to be provided to Mr. Lane, who would then have to provide it to a member of the staff at the jail, the names of which I have from the captain at the jail as to what persons are involved in the laptop process. And then once that's done, I would require Mr. Lane to identify with a filing in the court, probably in the form of an affidavit, as to when, where, and how the USB drive was received by him, and when, where, how, and to whom it was delivered.
Thank you.
Your Honor, I feel uncomfortable when you supply my evidence to the jail. So I don't know if there's a way that, I don't know if you are aware, but.
All right, let's bring back in our guest, still with us, criminal defense attorney, former prosecutor Eric Faddis. Eric, first impression, and look, it's very early in the process, but I'm fairly impressed by Sarah Boone, her questions, the things she's talking about. She seems to understand what's going on and what's needed.
Yeah, I am too. I got to admit, she's made at least a few colorably meritorious arguments where she's asking to limit the media for this hearing that's going to discuss evidence that may be inadmissible. That's a good argument. And that's what a defense attorney would make. They would say, hey, we don't want the media hearing about evidence that could be inadmissible because it could taint the process, potentially taint the jurors. And that one was a potential win for Sarah Boone.
Yeah, no doubt about it. It's not something everyone thinks about. She was right on point with that. So we got to give her definitely a check in that column. This issue of evidence viewing and its procedures, explain to our viewers, you've been on both sides of this, what normally happens versus what has to happen in this case, because again, she's an incarcerated defendant representing herself.
Oftentimes, when there are attorneys on both sides, they will pick a place to review physical evidence that might be offered at a trial. So for example, in this case, it might be the suitcase. It might be other phones, other physical evidence. And they would meet somewhere, usually a police department, district attorney's office. There would be people from both sides present, and they would review the evidence and make notes and decide how they want to further their investigation. Here, what they're going to do instead is have Sarah Boone kind of by or not totally by herself. There will be other people there watching what she's doing because they don't want her tampering with any physical evidence. But it's going to be an augmented process, not something the court is used to. And you can kind of hear the court struggling here and there with issues in terms of how it's going to address this evidence viewing and a follow-up hearing.
And at the end of the day, the way the judge seemed to put it out there is that he wants to do it in open court to make sure that there's a record of the fact that she's seen it. Because if they turn this stuff over to her and put it, send it over to jail, which would be a problem, wherever she's being held, there's no way of them really knowing that she's looked at the things she needs to look at and had the proper opportunity to examine it all.
Exactly. I mean, she has a due process right, among other rights, that entail her being allowed to review this evidence in person. And so the court is kind of going out of its way to make sure that she gets that opportunity. And that was just another one of those accommodations we talked about for pro se clients. Another one is that they're going to have part of this be sort of secret under the guise of plea negotiations. But they're not talking about resolving the case. They're not talking about plea offers. They're talking about the evidence. And so they're just a number of accommodations that it looks like the government is making on Sarah Boone's behalf.
I want to check back on something I mentioned earlier about this second-degree murder charge, and I suggested that it would be a victory for a defense attorney in this case to get it reduced to, let's say, manslaughter. And I'll just quickly read. Maybe the manslaughter is basically where you do something, you're not trying to cause death, although what you did is intentional, but you're not trying to cause death, and the death is not reasonably likely. Now, the reason why I'm saying that would be a victory is because with the video where you have Jorge saying, "I can't breathe," I think it makes it difficult to convince a jury that she walks away from him not with the idea that it might be reasonable that he could die in there because he said he couldn't breathe.
Yeah, there are a number of other charges. Sometimes we call them lesser included or lesser non-included that she could pursue to try to convince this jury of that would substantially lessen the sentencing range that she would face.
Yeah, I think ultimately with her, intoxication, et cetera, there's a chance that a good attorney could get this reduced down to a manslaughter conviction. So anyway, Eric Faddis, thank you so much for being with me this last hour. Real pleasure to have you on the show.
Now, the next thing that I'm going to put up is her actual trial or her actual hearing from yesterday. And then I did see a little bit of it where an officer got up and testified. So we'll see what he had to say, because I think it was something to do with an accusation that Sarah Boone made about the jail. So here this is.
Madam Clerk.
Steve Ketcher on behalf of the state.
William J. for the state. Ma'am, good morning. Can you raise your right hand? Madam Clerk will swear you in.
You swear or affirm that the testimony you give shall be the truth, so help you God. Yes.
All right, ma'am, good morning, rather. Could you state your full name and date of birth for the record for me?
Sarah Boone, 10-10-77.
Okay, we
had a hearing this Monday on August the 5th. The court had entered a scheduling order and notice of hearings. Ma'am, that was sent to you by way of mail. Did you receive that?
I did yesterday.
Okay, all right. I know that you had brought up concerns regarding mailing, and I just wanted to go through the historics with regard to the mailing. As you may recall, back on June 28th, we had a hearing where I granted Ms. Cushman's motion to withdraw and addressed your forfeiture, alternatively a waiver to counsel. You were hand-delivered a copy of that order. On May 25, we had a hearing and an order was entered and a notice of hearing was set. That order was hand-delivered to you. Thereafter, there was an order setting hearing that was entered on July 29. That letter, or that order rather, was sent to you at P.O. Box 9109, Seminole, Florida 33775, which is the Orange County Corrections Department mail address for general inmate mail. That was remedied the next day. On July 30th, a certificate of service was entered to the appropriate address. identifying you, your inmate number, FDC-B4, PO Box 4970, Orlando, Florida 32802, which is the address that you placed in your motion and your notice. That certificate of service included the notice of filing of the memorandum from the Orange County Corrections Department, Security Operations, and there was also a certificate of service providing you the Justice Administrative Commission's response to motions seeking due process costs. The next mailings was a notice of mailing of documents by your former attorney, Patricia Cashman, which was the transcripts of depositions of detectives Chelsea Copsell and Scott Lowen, which were taken on May 7th, 2024. That was e-filed on August the 1st, 2024, and mailed to you with address to you, your inmate number, FDC Dorm B, PO Box 4970, I apologize, PO Box 4970, Orlando, Florida. Did you receive those deposition transcripts?
I did.
Okay. Then the notice of delivery, would you recall when you received those transcripts?
Everything that you are stating was received on Monday.
The 5th?
Correct.
Okay. The next was a notice of delivery of digital copies of documents that was e-filed by your former attorney, Patricia Cashman, on August 1, 2024, which provided the transcripts of depositions of detectives Chelsea Copsell and Scott Lowen taken May 7, 2024 to Billy Lane on August 1st. And that was mailed to you at the same address. We've been addressing PO Box 4970 on August 1. Did you receive that notice?
I'm sorry, what was that for?
Notice of delivery of digital copies of documents, which reflected the deposition transcripts of the detectives I just identified to Mr. Lane.
To be honest with you, I don't know. It was a lump sum of a giant amount of paperwork, and I haven't gone through it yet.
Okay.
They had me sign about 4 or 5 different documents, so.
Okay.
For receipt.
And the last was a certificate of service that was just e-filed on May the 5th, which was provided to you as well on August the 5th. It was provided to you on August the 5th at the PO Box we've identified by way of U.S. mail, which was a copy of the order authorizing the defense to incur costs for private investigator and the scheduling order and notice of hearings entered August 5, 2024. Have you received both of those?
I did, and I had questions on that, please, whenever.
In just a moment, ma'am. So I know that there was a concern with regard to mailing and things purportedly not being timely provided to you. There was only one order, the order of July 29th, which was sent to the general mail delivery, and that was remedied the exact next day on July 30th. So that clerical error as to the wrong address was remedied one day after the original order was sent out on July the 29th. I just wanted to put that on the record and again, identify for you, ma'am, that nothing's being withheld from you and everything is being timely served to you as required. Now, you had questions about the JAC order. I will revisit those in just a moment. I've got a sticky with regard to that.
And I was going to say, please, if I may, about the address. There were 2 or 3 different documents that were uploaded to the tablet. So those 3 documents, without knowing specifically which ones they are, those were also sent to PO Box 9101.
I don't know what you're talking about.
You were talking about supposedly just one document that was mailed to the incorrect address. It was more than one.
That's not correct. Court scoured the court file this morning, ma'am. The court has not filed anything other than what I've identified since that June 28th order where you were representing yourself pro se. So that is incorrect.
Is it something that I need to record and bring back, or is it that big of a deal?
I can't answer that question. That may call for me providing you legal advice.
Okay.
But I can't tell you that other than the July 29th order, which was remedied the next day, everything has been sent to the appropriate legal mail address as provided by the Orange County Jail. We've had this hearing today to address a couple of things based on the scheduling order and notice of hearing that was entered August 5. The first was the digital evidence issue. I've been advised, I think through Mr. Lane, who I do see in the courtroom. Mr. Lane, if you could come on up, sir, so Madam Clerk can swear you in.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you should give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do. All right, Mr. Lane, good morning, sir. Can you state your full name and your affiliation with Prison Break Investigations, please?
Billy Lane, Chief Investigator, owner of Prison Break Investigations.
Okay. I understand part of the order from Monday was regarding the state's digital evidence. I understand that may have been provided on a USB drive to you, Mr. Lane. I want to hear from the state with regard to that first. So either Mr. J or Mr. Cacciatore.
Yes, Your Honor. We have tendered to Mr. Lane a copy of our the exhibit list with our expected items of evidence that will be received, along with expected witnesses that, to be called at the trial. A copy of that was provided on the USB with the exhibits, the witness list, also proposed jury instructions and a stipulation as to victim ID for her review as well.
Okay. And when was that provided to Mr. Lane?
Just now.
Okay. All right. The witness and exhibit list that is included on that USB, do you have hard copies?
I do, Your Honor. I would like to file them in open court.
That was going to be my next question. Okay.
And I have a copy for defense.
Okay, very good. Debbie Bruce, if we can get the copy of the witness list and the exhibits and take that from Mr. Lane and provide it to Ms. Boone.
Yes. And Your Honor, the state's position is that given that our exhibit list contains within it a witness list as well, we would ask that that document be sealed the way the witness lists are routinely sealed. A copy of that request to seal is there with the notice of the witness list on the initial page before our notice of the exhibit list.
What I have in front of me is the notice of provision of witness list and then the notice of expected evidence and witnesses of trial. I don't have an order or.
It wouldn't be an order. It would just be that first document you read, reference, the notice of provisional witness list.
Got it. Okay, thank you. All right. Anything else with regard to the expected evidence and digital evidence?
No.
Okay, so just for my own understanding, there are 9 files on the USB drive that are digital in nature. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, all right. And those are all on the USB drive that is going to be provided to Ms. Boone?
Yes, they're broken down by folders.
And the folders, or the names of the folders, do they match the names in the digital evidence list?
They roughly match. I believe that on there may be some slight change of terminology from, I believe, files found on iPhone as opposed to suitcase, videos, and still shot.
Okay, all right. State, anything else to add with regard to the digital evidence?
No, I also have a copy of the thumb drive as well that Mr. Lane has had an opportunity to copy for his client that I can tender to Mr. Lane to tender to his client.
Is that different that we've already given him?
He had an opportunity to copy it, but this would be their copy to retain.
Okay, all right. So you can go ahead and provide that. Do you want to mark that as an exhibit for the purposes of the hearing? I guess not, since it's going to be transferred directly to Mr. Lane.
Correct.
Okay, all right. You can go ahead and give that to Mr. Lane. All right. Ma'am, or Mr. Cacciatore, any other questions? Anything else you want to bring to my attention with regard to the digital evidence?
No, Your Honor.
Okay. Ma'am, have you had the opportunity to review the notice of expected evidence and witnesses at trial document that was just provided to the court and yourself this morning?
I did.
Okay. Do you have any questions with regard to the digital evidence, which are paragraphs 1 through 9 on the first and second pages of the notice?
I don't know what the majority of them are. Is this part of the evidence that was supplied to me on all of the USB drives that was supplied also?
Yes, this is a pared down. All of the items referenced in our notice and provided on the USB have already been previously disclosed and given to defense.
Okay. Any other questions? Yes.
Yes, on the USB drives for the laptop, it's not compatible with the USB drives for some of the files. So I cannot open a majority of what are on both of the USB drives.
What do you mean you cannot open a majority? What can you not open?
I don't know specifically which files. I know that some of them come up as videos, some of them come up as JPEG, some of them come up as different formats, but there's an entire page of multiple icons that come up, and every time I try to open one, it won't let me review it.
Okay.
So I don't know.
What does it say?
I don't know. I moved on from that to try to go to other programs. So I don't know. I figured it would be something that I might be able to speak to Billy about when he came to see me early next week. So, but I'm just stating to the court now, that's one of the problems that I'm having with the laptop.
But you said it's a majority, but you can't identify specifics for me. And that's what I'm trying to figure out. What is it that you're not able to look at?
It doesn't identify what they are because of the amount. When I click on a particular file, there's a file inside of a file inside of a file. So when I try to open one of the files, all these different icons come up. So if I try to click on one, it says unavailable. So I keep trying to go to the next one, the next one, and the next one, but they're all the same format, so I can't open any of those.
Okay. And how many times has that happened?
The one time
One file, 10 files, 20 files, 50 files, or was it just a one time and then you moved on to something else?
I don't know how many files were in it because I didn't bother to waste my time on trying to open. I believe I tried to open about 8 or 9 of them, and then I just moved on from that folder into another folder.
And the other items in the other folder, were those accessible? Were those viewable?
For the most part, yes. I have not had a
I don't know
moment
what
to.
for the most part means.
I haven't had time yet to explore everything due to the dorm environment. So as soon as in the amount of information, the vast amount of information that he has on there, I'm trying to figure out a way where I can sit in it. I have a letter to you that I wrote to the captain, a copy for you. So you know what I'm trying to work on in order for privacy to be had. So I haven't explored both USB drives to the fullest potential that I possibly can yet. Just from the moment that I have attempted to do so, the one problem I have had was with the one folder with many icons in it. I attempted to open about 8 or 9 of them, could not, so I moved on to whatever was next.
Okay, all right. Hey.
I could add to that everything that we have provided on this USB file, we have checked. It's all on standard formats. For instance, the public surveillance video that's referenced in our notice, we included both the original Publix files from there, and then we also had those files converted to VLC because they are easier to play in VLC. So if she clicks on that folder, she can click again on a subfolder, and she will find the VLC files for where the Publix video has been converted. So everything in there should be standard JPEG, VLC, and also believe an MP4 for some audio-only files.
Okay, all right. Ma'am, do you have any other questions with regard to the digital information or digital evidence identified in the notice that the state's provided the court and yourself this morning?
That was what was just handed to Mr. Lane. So Mr. Lane, you and I would go over that when you and I meet.
I will be meeting with you tomorrow. There is a concern that I will not be able to transfer this to Ms. Boone through the jail protocol.
I have a remedy for that. With regard to, well, let me finish with the digital. Any other concerns, ma'am, as to the items identified in this notice?
Until I'm able to open them and see them, no, I do not.
Sure. Okay. State, anything else we need to talk about with regard to that issue?
Not in regards to that issue.
Okay, all right. So, Mr. Lane, I'm going to ask that you take possession of that jump drive that was tendered to you in court this morning, and you advise the court that you're going to be meeting with Ms. Boone tomorrow. Is that correct? About approximately what time are you going to be meeting with her? If you know?
9 a.m.
Okay, all right. I have had the opportunity to have further conversations with Major Muhammad at the jail, including conversations regarding the physical documents. Ma'am, are you still requesting hard copies of the documents?
I am.
Okay. The jail has advised me that they've had conversations with you related to any other property or legal documents that you may need. Have you ever advised the jail that you have everything that you need and don't need anything else?
No, one of the sergeants came and spoke to me yesterday, miscommunication of some sort, where I explained to her what I'm trying to do with purging my property and the property department so I can anticipate those discovery hard copies.
Was that Tracy Hall?
No, that was Hall. Her last name is Hall.
So it was Hall, H-A-L-L, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
But someone sent her to me to see me, so I just don't know who that was.
Who was it you communicated with yesterday regarding your personal effects that may have been in a property locker?
Miss Hall.
Okay, all right, thank you. Do you know Miss Hall's first name?
I don't know any of the officers.
Okay, all right. So in conversations with Major Muhammad, they are going to be able to accommodate you having your paper copies. So Mr. Lane, I know that you took custody of those and have had them. So tomorrow, when you meet Ms. Boone at approximately 9 a.m., you will meet Mr. Muhammad as well. Well, let me ask this. Are you able to go to the jail today?
I can, yes.
Okay, so I know for a fact that Major Muhammad is available today, and he may be expecting you to arrive today. If you are able to provide to him the banker's boxes that were identified as A and B and that jump drive, and then provide the court with a notice as to when and what time and that to whom you gave it should be Major Muhammad, those items, so we can file it in the court file. And those will then be, the digital evidence will then be provided with the laptop in accordance with the protocol that we've gone over previously. And Major Muhammad will make sure that Ms. Boone has access to the hard copies. So after conferring, well, let me ask this. State, do you have any other position with regard to the motion that was set to be heard today, the defendant's motion regarding seeking for hard copies?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, so for the record then, that motion will be granted. The motion for defendant to lawfully receive, review, utilize the original hard copy discovery, 2 boxes A and B, submitted to the court by former attorneys on June 28, 2024 for preparation of trial in her criminal case. As ordered, Mr. Lane will deliver those to the jail today and seek to have them delivered to Major Malik Muhammad, along with the digital the USB drive with the digital evidence. Mr. Lane, the deposition transcripts of detectives Chelsea Copsall and Scott Lowen were purportedly sent to you on August 1st. Did you receive those from Ms. Cashman?
Yes.
Okay, were they a part of the 2 USB drives that we addressed on August 5? You had the smaller one, which was everything you digitized from the 2 boxes, and then you had the larger one of other materials that you had been given previously.
No, but I do have a drive that I can put them on and make sure they get to the jail today.
Okay, if you could make sure, sir, that when you drop off the other 2 things, digital copies, I know Ms. Boone has identified that she has the physical copies, but I'd like to give her digital copies just in case. State, do you have any questions with regard to the court's directive to Mr. Lane regarding the hard copies, depositions of the detectives, or the digital evidence the state may seek to admit in trial?
No, Your Honor.
All right. Ma'am, do you have any questions for Mr. Lane regarding those 3 items?
No.
Okay. Can Mr. Lane be released?
Yes.
Okay. If you want to, can he be released, ma'am?
I guess I'll see you at 9.
Okay. Sir, if you could endeavor to do that today, I would greatly appreciate it.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
All right. The next matter this morning is the defendant's motion for defendant's reasonable freedom and movement by allowing her to be unshackled, unhandcuffed, to function equally and comfortably while utilizing the courtroom that was hand filed with the court on August 5, 2024. Court has had the opportunity to review that motion and the law regarding restraints. State, do you have any positions at this time with regard to the defense's motion?
Your Honor, in speaking with courtroom security, we would oppose the motion, and we have Corporal Gavin Lowton available to supplement this court's knowledge on the issue.
Okay, so ma'am, we're going to have a hearing on your motion. The state will call the corporal. He will be inquired by the state as to some concerns that they may have, and you'll be given the opportunity to ask him questions or cross-examine him after the state's concluded asking any questions. Do you have any questions about that process?
Is that today?
That will be happening right now. Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
Do you have any questions about that process?
I don't.
Okay, all right, let's go ahead and call your witness. State.
State will call Gavin Lowton.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you should give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Sir, good morning. Can you state and spell your name for the record for me?
Gavin Alton, Gavin, LWTAN.
All right, thank you. State, you may proceed.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
And what is it that you do for a living?
I work for the Orange County Sheriff's Office as a deputy sheriff.
And to what area of the sheriff's office are you assigned?
Court and security.
And how long have you worked that assignment?
4 or 5 years now.
And tell us, what are some of your duties within that assignment?
I supervise the deputies in 2 felony courtrooms and 1 civil courtroom.
And are you familiar with the defendant in this particular case?
Just through research that I've done on her, I don't have any personal knowledge.
And what, in regards to that research into the defendant, what is your position as the head of security regarding her request to be free from shackles?
I do not believe she should be free of shackles.
And why is it that you have come to that conclusion?
Based on her current charge of second degree murder, she also has previous domestic arrest for battery by strangulation. She has 3 separate incidents at the jail for non-compliance, where she was told to attend her court hearings or scheduled court hearings, and she refused to do so. And then even when the corrections officers told her she could be charged with contempt of court, she still refused to attend those hearings. Those kind of, when you combine all that, to me it shows a propensity for violence and not wanting to follow lawful commands and orders of law enforcement personnel.
What accommodations can be made in order to keep concealed the fact that she is shackled or restrained during trial?
So when the defendant is here, she would just be in leg restraints. She wouldn't have the belly chains. She wouldn't have handcuffs on. We've modified the leg restraints by wrapping tape around the chains. So even if she's to make motion or movement, it wouldn't make noise to alert the jury as to that she's got restraints on. She would be brought in and sat at the defense table prior to the jury coming in and being seated, so they wouldn't see her walk in with restraints on. And there's a panel in front of the defense table that prevents the jury from seeing that she's got leg restraints on.
Your Honor, I don't believe I have any further questions at this time.
Thank you. Ma'am, do you have any questions for Officer Lowton?
I do.
Go ahead.
First off, in your, in quotes, research that you've done on me, the domestic violence case that I was charged with, the felony with strangulation, was dropped. I don't know if you were aware of that in your research. Yes, so I was never charged with that. Also, what 3 hearings is it that I supposedly missed on what dates?
I have those here.
I've never missed a court date. In the almost 5 years that I've been here, I've never argued, I've never hesitated.
Object to the form of the question, Your Honor.
I'm going to sustain the objection. Ma'am, you have to ask 1 fact per question.
Okay.
I am prepared to give her the dates. Okay. On September 15, 2023, that was one of the times you refused to attend. October 16, 2023, and January 28, 2021.
And do you know what those were specifically for?
For court attendance, wherever you were scheduled for that day.
For a hearing or pretrial or withdrawal?
I don't know. This is just information from the jail where the corrections officer said you refused to attend your hearings.
So is that on record that I have supposedly refused these 3 dates to appear in
At
court?
the jail, yes.
Who is your contact, please? I've never missed a date.
This is the database that I got this information from.
Do you know when it was last updated?
I do not.
Okay, so do you know how, I have never missed a court date to the present date. I don't know specifically what these 3 dates are for, in order for me to have supposedly denied going. Do you know the name of the officers for each one? You do?
Yes.
Please.
For September 15th, 2023, it is Corrections Officer Portia Hines,
Could you spell her last name, please?
Hines.
And you said the date was 9/15/23?
Correct.
Okay.
And if you would like, I can read her comments in her report.
Sure.
At approximately midnight, I informed inmate Boone, Sarah, that she was scheduled to appear in court today. Inmate Boone stated she did not want to attend court. I advised her that her absence could result in being held in contempt of court. Inmate Boone stated she understood and continued in her decision to refuse. Corporal L. Cameron was notified. This report is being generated for informational purposes.
But it doesn't say what it was that I supposedly refused.
To attend court. It doesn't say specifically what your hearing is for.
Okay.
Second one, it'll be Officer Christy Green.
And what is this date for?
I'm sorry, what's that?
Which date is it that you're referencing?
That's going to be October 16th, 2023.
Okay, and I'm sorry, the name?
Green, Greene.
And what was the first initial, please?
K.
Greene.
Yes.
10/16/23.
Yes.
Okay.
And the third one is January 28th, 2021. And the officer is Jasmine Scribner. Scribner.
What are the comments, please, for Green?
At approximately 0300 hours, I advised inmate Boone, Sarah, that she was on schedule to attend downtown court. Inmate Boone stated she did not want to attend court. I informed inmate Boone that if she fails to attend, she could be held in contempt of court. Inmate Boone acknowledged she understood and continued with the decision to refuse to attend court. Corporal Ward at the Booking and Release Center, transport officer, was notified. All proper notations were made in the IMS.
Okay. And January 28th?
At approximately 0334 hours, inmate Boone, Sarah, was advised she has downtown court and to start getting ready. Inmate Boone stated she did not want to attend court. I informed inmate Boone that she could be charged with contempt of court. Inmate Boone still refused to attend court. Corporal Hall and the Booking and Release Center transportation officer were notified of this incident. This report is being generated for informational purposes only.
And all of those comments were made on the day of that I supposedly refused.
I don't know when they entered that.
It doesn't state in their IMS, in their program?
It might, but I didn't take that information down.
Okay, so I'm trying to figure out how I know all 3 corporals and the sergeant, so I've never refused court. There's no reason for me to want to refuse court.
I'm going to object this to asked and answered.
I'm going to sustain the objection.
So the domestic violence, the original, was dropped. I was never charged with that.
Object as to relevance, Your Honor.
Overruled. You can answer the question, sir.
Okay. It was dropped. You were charged and arrested. I don't know why the state dropped it. It could be because both parties, based on the report that I read, did not want to cooperate, so they probably didn't have information to go forward with the charges. That does not mean that you didn't commit the act, it just meant the state felt that they didn't have a case that they could win.
What is your definition of probably did not cooperate? Was it a fact or you're just guessing?
It said,
Your Honor, I'm going to object to the question.
Objection sustained.
Both of the charges were dropped for Mr. Torres and for myself was because we did cooperate and there was not enough information. And we received documentation in the mail, both of us, for the reasons why it was dropped.
Your Honor, I'm going to object this to the form of the question. It's not a question, it's a statement.
Sustained.
Forgive me because I don't know what I'm doing. I'm trying to provide my information for what it is that I'm being accused of. I don't know if I'm doing it the wrong way, apparently. So I don't know I don't know the protocol for this. I'm just trying to answer my accusations.
I understand your position. I cannot tell you what to do. I cannot provide you any legal advice.
Okay, I'm just stating to the court that I'm doing my best with being uneducated in this situation. That is for the non-compliance, I need to speak to the corporals and the sergeant in order for that to be remedied. And then what about, do you need the documentation for the domestic charge that I was not charged with and it was dropped cooperatively?
I do know that the charges were dropped. I'm just saying that is in your history.
I understand, but I was never charged with it, correct?
You were charged with it. It was dropped. The charges were dropped.
But it is not on my record.
The rest is on your record.
But the charge for the domestic violence is not on my record.
No, you were never
Object
convicted.
to ask and answer, Your Honor.
Overruled.
You were never convicted of the domestic battery charge, but you were charged with it.
And the case was dropped.
Yes.
For the three supposed non-compliance that I have, I know that 2 of the officers are no longer with the Department of Corrections, Orange County Corrections Department. So I will need to speak to their supervisors in order for me to have, I guess, this remedy. Is it
Your Honor, I'm going to object to the form of the question. This is a statement, not a question.
The objection is sustained.
I guess I will provide information to you for the non-compliance occurrences that I'm being charged with.
Your Honor, again, I'm going to object as to, that's not a question, it's a statement.
The objection is sustained.
I know this is a lame question, but what does sustained mean?
That means the state's legal basis for you asking that question is correct, and the court will not permit you to ask that question
Thank you.
in the way that it may be asked.
What do I need to provide to you in order to have that remedied, in order for me to be unhandcuffed?
Your Honor, again, I'm going to object as to the form of the question.
Overruled.
Whatever documentation, but I believe that the decision as to whether or not you'll be in restraints will be made today.
I understand, but it can be made.
What's that?
The decision in order to be unhandcuffed.
Correct. I suppose if you have documentation to say that this was all fabricated, then I wouldn't be able to use this.
Correct, as you telling me about the domestic violence. That cannot be used against me either.
It is still part of your history. I can bring it up.
Right, but just to clarify and conclude, I was not ever charged with that.
Again, I'm going to object as to ask and answer.
Sustained.
Okay, I will, do I provide this information to you?
You can provide it to the state.
Okay. Am I, in your opinion, a flight risk or detrimental to the courtroom and am a threat of any type of harm?
Based on what I've researched, I don't know you personally, but based on my research, I don't think it would be appropriate for you not to be in restraint.
And then what was the year, please, for the charge that was dropped with the domestic violence?
It was 2018.
2018?
Correct.
And it is now 2024. Okay. And you're going solely off of what, the arrest affidavit? What is it that you're using to conclude due to this occurrence that was dropped that I would not be able to be unrestrained?
Correct. Your arrest history, the information I read, all the research that I've done, that's where I'm basing my conclusion on.
But what specifically from that 2018 charge?
The fact that you were charged with battery by strangulation, which is a violent act, is one of the reasons why I've said that I do not believe it's appropriate for you not to be in restraints.
But it was never proven, correct, because it was dropped?
It was dropped, doesn't mean it didn't happen.
Okay. I'll be working on the others with the corporals and the sergeant for the supposed non-compliance. Thank you for the dates and the information.
You're welcome.
Ma'am, do you have any other questions?
Do I need to supply anything for the 2018 domestic violence occurrence that you are referencing and applying?
It's already been dropped, I'm just telling you what the history is. So,
And you can still apply it even though it's not been.
correct, it's in your history.
Okay. Thank you for the information.
Any follow-ups, Dave?
No, Your Honor, it's fine.
Thank you, sir. Anything else, Dave?
Not from the state.
Okay. See Deputy Barnett here. Could you come up, sir?
Please swear or affirm the testimony you should give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes, I do.
Sir, good afternoon, or good morning, rather. Can you state your full name and date of birth for the record for me?
My name is Chad Barnett.
And not your date of birth. Sorry. Could you spell your name for the record?
C-H-A-D-B-A-R-N-E-T-T.
And what are your duties and responsibilities here at the Orange County Courthouse?
I'm the deputy sheriff at the Orange County Courthouse. I work in courtrooms, I supervise squads, and I'm also in charge of training inside the courthouse.
Okay. Is there any training that's addressed with regard to other security measures other than shackles that may be provided for defendants?
Yes, we have an item called a stun cuff that is also used in the courtroom.
Okay, could you step us through what a stun cuff is?
A stun cuff is an electronic device that's wireless. It's boxed secure to the leg. It has 50,000 volts, and it's able to be remotely sparked from a distance.
How is it fixed or placed on a person?
It's dual strapped along the calf of either leg. It can be hidden in the pants, and it gives the ability to be able to walk around.
And who is in charge of operating that device?
It'll be an assigned officer that's been trained in the device.
And step us through the operation of how that device is utilized or operated by that officer.
The officer will show the device to the subject or the inmate or the defendant. It will be secured with 2 straps on the leg. There is a waiver to be signed prior to being used, explaining when it would be used, if it was needed to be used during court, violence, attempt to escape, any actions that lead to that level of to use the device. It's a 2-step process, so there is no way for it to accidentally be set off. It has to be hit 2 separate buttons, so there's no accidents. If it had to be used, it would cause a shock to the location on the calf, cause a great amount of pain, causing the defendant most likely to fall to the ground, and we could secure and take care of the situation after that.
Are there any other protocols or standard operating procedures regarding the use of the stun belt?
other than what you've already identified?
Just to follow the response to resistance policy.
Okay, and can you explain the response to resistance policy?
We have a level of response to resistance depending on what an individual does to what we would do. So if she was attempt to escape or fight, we would use it to match that level of resistance.
What is the level of resistance whereby which the stun belt would be deployed or utilized?
At this moment, it is at a level 3.
And what is a level 3?
3 would be failing to follow the directions and stuff like that. If we asked her to get up and move or not, or follow the lawful order, we could use it. Most likely in the courtroom, we would use it probably at a level 4 level. That is pretty much fighting, escaping, attacking another person.
Okay, all right. State, do you have any questions to Deputy Barnett?
No, Your Honor.
Ma'am, do you have any questions for Deputy Barnett?
I do, please.
Go ahead.
Tell me, what is the title of this?
Stun
Cuff.
cuff.
And you said this was applied on the calf or the ankle?
Yeah, the Achilles tendon area of your leg.
And is this something that does it need extensive preparation, or is it something that can just be put on coming and going from the courtroom?
We would place it on you before the court starts. You can take it off as court every time we exit the courtroom. It takes a few moments besides signing the waiver and securing it to your leg.
And it's a one-time waiver?
Each day you have to resign the waiver.
Okay, and so there's no limit to how many times it can be put on and taken off, put on, taken off?
No.
And it's a very simple process to apply
Yes,
and remove?
yes.
Thank you.
Any follow-up?
Nothing to say.
Sorry.
Sorry.
Would I have my hands free, correct?
Yes, you would have your hands free either way. If you were in a leg iron, your hands would be completely free. The stun cuff, same thing.
And then I would be able to walk?
You will be able to walk with the stun cuff freely, yes.
So hands free and able to walk?
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other follow-up? State.
No, Your Honor.
All right. Can Mr. Barnett or Sergeant Barnett be released?
Yes.
Ma'am, can he be released?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, sir. State, any argument, any further witnesses, evidence, or testimony with regard to the defendant's shackle motion?
No, Your Honor.
Ma'am, do you have any other things that you would like to tell the court with regard to your motion?
I don't understand what Sergeant Burnett was that you all providing me an option?
There is Florida Supreme Court case law addressing reasonable measures for movement by a defendant in the courtroom.
So that is an option?
Yes.
Okay. Do I need to supply the information in regards to the supposed 3 non-compliance before that can actually be made an actual option?
I cannot answer that question because that would be me providing you legal advice as to what you could, can, or should do, and I cannot do that.
Would I be able to be unrestrained with that information?
I think that would come down to the argument of yourself and from the state as to what the court has to consider with regard to your requests and your motion and what the law is in the state of Florida.
If I may make it clear also, I'm simply just asking to be unhandcuffed so I can write and move properly. I'm not trying to maneuver the courtroom and so on and so forth. I simply just am asking to sit here being unhandcuffed so I can write without taking skin off of my wrist and being extremely uncomfortable.
Okay. Ma'am, thank you for that clarification, because when I read your motion, you asked to be unshackled, to have freedom of movement. And I interpreted that as you wanted to move as everybody else may be able to move in this courtroom, as Mr. Cacciatore has moved around, how other persons have moved around. And it wasn't only limited to your hands. I thought it meant to your entire person based on what it is that you were seeking in your motion. So just for the purposes of my own clarification, is your motion only seeking to have your hands not bound so that you can move your hands, but otherwise shackles that may be on your legs would continue to stay there?
Right. I don't currently have shackles, but I don't know what is in regards to trial procedure. And in regards for you not having the clarification of me just wanting to be unhandcuffed, is it my responsibility, or I don't know if you can answer this, but you don't ask questions, which is what got me in this predicament from the get-go of having no counsel, because no questions were ever asked to me, just for the majority of my motions and letters and so on that I have supplied the court for more information to try to intervene and help. It's just gotten me into hotter water and no counsel and still restrained. So is it something that I need to specifically clarify going forward, or is it something that you have the ability to ask me questions so you have a better understanding?
Generally, I don't know that I can answer that question because it may call for me providing you legal advice. If I'm asking questions, it's because I'm trying to clarify things from my understanding. I cannot ask questions on your behalf. I cannot ask questions for you. I cannot assist you in any process, be it this hearing or at trial.
Right. Yes, I understand. I wasn't asking for assistance. I was just trying to understand by you not asking questions in regards to my motion about being unhandcuffed and unshackled simply meant just my handcuffs.
Ma'am, I reviewed your motion to be unshackled, unhandcuffed, and allowed reasonable freedom to movement and functioning accordingly, equally, and comfortably while utilizing the courtroom. All normal movement of the defendant's hands is as a whole freely, properly, successfully accomplish any task that is needed. Asking to be unshackled and unhandcuffed, the defendant is simply requesting equal, comfortable, functional movement to achieve advancement in her forfeited right to counsel by the court, which will greatly enhance the productivity and progress for the defendant and the completion of her defense in her criminal case in preparation for trial. Your wherefore clause specifically asks to be unshackled, unhandcuffed, and allowed reasonably freedom in movement to function equally, accordingly, and comfortably in the courtroom. I took that as you wanted to move around. You did not want to be shackled, which would be your legs as well, and you did not want to have handcuffs. If you're telling me now that all you're asking is your hands to be free, that's respectfully not what your motion says over and over and over again, as I've just read. So if you would like to clarify for me now at this time, you can, as to what it is that you're asking of me.
Yes, handcuffed. I would like to have these handcuffs removed from my wrists.
Okay.
In regards to the unshackled, I know at some point I would have to maneuver, I'm guessing, in the courtroom for trial. So I didn't want to have to wait last moment to have to do another motion to be unshackled if that's what my option is, because I don't know. So I was just trying to be transparent prior so you would know what it was that I was hopefully expecting. But first,
go ahead.
It's just handcuffs means unhandcuffed. And if for trial I have to be shackled, to be unshackled.
Okay, and when you say unshackled, what do you mean by that? Just so that we're all on the same field.
Shackled, as far as my understanding is from being shackled, means that I have this along with my waist, along with my ankles. So unhandcuffed is simply for the hands and the wrists, and then unshackled would be for my ankles and for the feet.
And is that what you were seeking for trial purposes?
I didn't know if I was going to be shackled or not. So that, again, that was why I was trying to be transparent and up forward by doing so now to make the court aware that that would be a request of mine at the time.
Okay, all right. So you would be seeking to be unshackled, no leg restraints, no arm restraints at trial, right?
Please.
Okay.
Yes.
Would you also be asking of the court to move around the courtroom when trial would take place?
I'm not sure if this is considered legal advice, but I don't know. I know from seeing other trials, the state and the defense, they maneuver the courtroom in front of the jury, so on and so forth, and they hand things back and forth. I would have to have other movement other than me sitting here. So yes, I would have very limited, reasonable movement in the courtroom for trial. Okay. Yes.
Is there anything else, ma'am, that you would like to tell me with regard to what you're seeking in your motion to be hands-free, for lack of a better word, during any hearings that we may have, and then to be hands-free, unshackled with your legs, and to have movement in the courtroom during the course of the trial? Is there anything else that you'd like to tell me about those requests?
I don't know if you've been able to see my difficulty with just simply trying to take notes Yes, very much. I would like to be unhandcuffed, just to sit here and be in attendance of my hearings, conferences, whatever it is. For the trial, when the time comes for any limited movement that I would have, the stun cuff, I would sign the waiver now. Just whatever it is that I can do in order to enable myself to be able to have the same comfortable atmosphere and movement and equal opportunities just as everyone else.
Thank you. Anything else you'd like to tell me, ma'am?
No, Your Honor.
Okay. State any argument.
Your Honor, you've heard the Sheriff's Office's position. They're in charge of courtroom security. They presented basically their position is she should not be unshackled, but you've also heard from Deputy Barnett who explained the options that are available to the court. Our position is if you do not allow her freedom of movement with the stun cuff, then today is probably the best day to start talking about the logistics of how we're going to do this trial so it does not create the inference that she is an inmate. Does that mean the state will be sitting at counsel table to question witnesses? How are we going to go about getting back and forth to the clerk and to the witness to present exhibits if she is not going to be able to do the same with shackles? So we just want to bring everything to the court's attention so we can get it all settled today.
I agree, which was the purpose of why we wanted to set it for today, to address all those circumstances and again, think ahead. Ma'am, do you have any closing remarks or arguments that you'd like to make to the court about your desires to be unhandcuffed, unshackled, and or utilize the stun cuff?
I believe that it is unfair that you, number one, want me to represent myself, and then number two, you would like for me to represent myself while being handcuffed, to be able to progressively and actively participate properly in the same as others with just simply being able to write notes. At some point, I'm sure I will be bringing things with me to court that I need to reach for, to open, to pass normal functions in a body as a whole, with the same equal level as anyone in the courtroom would have in order for myself to be able to do the same and function fairly and appropriately. I don't know if this is legal advice or not, but in a trial, are you able to tell me, are defendants shackled? Or is this something that I don't even need to worry about because they're not even shackled?
Typically, ma'am, the defendants have leg shackles that, as Deputy Lowton identified, they're wrapped so that they're muffled, so that they don't jingle jangle or bring any noise attention. And the privacy panels located in front of defense counsel's table would prohibit the jury from seeing those. Their hands are free, but the legs are in restraints.
Thank you. Yes, I very much would like to be unhandcuffed just to simply take notes and function normally and equally, just for hearings and so on and so forth, which we have a lot scheduled futuristically. And then when trial comes about, either way with trial and or hearings, the stun cuff, I am readily awaiting for that to be an option and to apply as soon as possible. Whatever it is and however it is that I need to, just to at least just have these removed.
Okay, got it. Any closing remarks, Mr. J?
No, Aaron, just address all the concerns, which is the court's plan.
Got it. All right, thank you very much. I think the Florida Supreme Court has given us the guidance specifically for a case just like this in Weaver versus State, 894 Southern 2nd, 178 by the Florida Supreme Court in 2004. In that case, there was a pro se defendant who was representing themselves who had been charged with first-degree murder. And there was no prior history of violent courtroom outbursts. The defendant in that case was representing themselves, and there was some concerns as to being allowed to move around the courtroom during trial may present some safety hazards. The court identified as there would be, in our case, potential sidebars, access to witnesses, evidence, jurors, etc. And that in that case, Weaver's pro se status meant that he would be moving about the courtroom in close proximity to the judge, jurors, prosecutors, witnesses, and potential firearm evidence. This closer proximity to various trial participants arguably raises greater safety concerns than a defendant who is represented by counsel and has no legitimate reason to wander beyond the defense table. Given those circumstances in which a defendant is charged with first-degree murder was representing himself and moving about the courtroom in close proximity to trial exhibits, especially adverse witnesses, the trial court did not abuse its discretion, even though Weaver had no prior history of violent courtroom behavior. In the Weaver case, the Florida Supreme Court found that the trial court's utilization of a stun belt was not so prejudicial when measured against the other alternative forms of restraint, and whether those alternatives are less prejudicial or viable. There was virtually no alternative to a stun gun, given the visibility of other restraints and the security concerns posed by Weaver's pro se status in that case. It is clear as a matter of Florida law that a criminal defendant's right to be free of physical restraints is not absolute, and that under the circumstances in the Weaver case, the decision to employ a stun belt constitutes a rational exercise of the trial court's discretion that was reasonably necessary to ensure order and safety in the courtroom, especially in light of the defendant's pro se status. In that case, we had a firearm. It was first-degree murder. Here we have second-degree murder. The incidents identified by Officer Lotan as to non-compliance in jail for purportedly refusing to return to show up in court, and the charge itself. The charge itself has some level of concern because it is a second-degree murder, but I don't see how where we are right now is not on all fours with Weaver, especially coupled with Ms. Boone's acquiescence to utilizing the stun cuff and saying she'd sign the waiver today. She doesn't have to. You'll have to sign the waiver when we get to trial. So unless I hear anything alternatively from the state, the courts would grant the motion that she would be unhandcuffed for any hearing we have moving forward. Instead of her position in the box, we would probably have her seated at counsel's table, unless I hear an objection from the state as to that. We'll address motions first. State, any position with regard to being unshackled and B, being seated at counsel's table for any motions moving forward?
No, we defer to the court and the sheriff's office, who is in charge of security. Our concerns are just making sure that she's given a fair trial and fashioning a remedy that is a fair presentation for the jury to observe.
Okay, perfect, thank you. All right, so ma'am, the court's gonna grant your motion, and then you will be unhandcuffed for every hearing moving forward. And instead of being in the jury box, you'll be seated at counsel's table, okay? You may still have your leg restraints on, but you'll be hands-free. For the purposes of trial, in accordance with the Florida Supreme Court decision in Weaver, you will be hands-free and you will not be shackled with legs. But the stun cuff, as identified by Sergeant Barnett, will be affixed to you and you'll have to sign that waiver. Do you have any questions for me, ma'am?
For sitting here in the council's table, you also said that I would be shackled. I'm not shackled now. Will I be shackled then?
My understanding is that you were. If you're not, and the only thing you have is your handcuffs?
Correct.
Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. If that's the case, then you'll be seated at counsel's table with that, as you are without your hand restraints.
Okay, so I would be unbound.
Correct.
Yes, thank you.
All right. The other item I have on, yes, sir.
I think the sheriff's office is looking for clarification, and I think I am too.
Okay.
I think the situation is because she has handcuffs on now, she doesn't have leg restraints, but for hearings, when her hands are unrestrained, her legs would be restrained.
Okay, I'm getting a thumbs up from the deputy in the back that that's the case. Is that the standard operating procedure, Deputy Loden? Okay, so ma'am, so I'll clarify my order. For the purposes of any hearings, you'll be hands-free, but you will have leg restraints.
Yes.
That's not going to affect any fairness or impartiality because it's just you and me and the state, and no jurors will see that. Yes, sir.
Also, Judge, when she's being transported from the jail, she is going to be fully handcuffed with the belly chains and all that. We can take those off
In advance.
She gets up here.
Yeah, I agree. I understand that. I'm just worried about the fairness here in the courtroom, especially when we bring in a jury panel. Okay. And for the purposes of trial, ma'am, you'll have no leg restraints, no hand restraints, your hands free, legs free, but you will have the stun cuff affixed to your leg. And as identified by Sergeant Barnett, you're going to have to sign that waiver every day, okay?
Of course, and if I may, if anyone knows, the stun cuff, does it go over clothing or does it have to?
It is under your clothing, as Sergeant Barnett identified. I have a representative from the Public Defender's Office who I've asked to be here. She's gonna have a conversation with you, ma'am, after our hearing, so she can facilitate clothing for you, including pants that would prohibit the jury from viewing that device on your legs.
Yes.
Okay?
Thank you.
All right. Does that clarify for you, State?
Yes, I just saw them and I thought that, I saw the confusion based on my experience and how it's done.
Okay.
Who cleared it up?
Thank you. Now, ma'am, that doesn't mean that you're gonna be able to wander wherever you want in the courtroom. There's gonna be spots where you're gonna be able to go to. You're not gonna be able to walk all the way up to witnesses. You're not gonna be able to walk everywhere that you want. There's gonna be places that you're gonna have to go to. When we get closer to trial, we'll address the box, for lack of a better word, for where you'd be able to go and not go. And I'm gonna give the same limitations to the state, okay?
I understand.
All right? Are you okay with addressing that later, Counselor?
Yeah, I mean, what I would envision is if she needs an exhibit brought to witness, I have no problem getting up and doing that for her.
I was gonna, either you could do it or I was gonna have the deputies do it. So, ma'am, I envision that because you're gonna be able to move about freely and our jurors are not gonna know that you have any restraints on you and they're not gonna be able to see the stun cuff, you can conduct any questions or statements or arguments from where you would like to be in the courtroom, either at counsel's table or at the podium here for you. If you need to approach a witness or you need to provide evidence to someone, I'm gonna ask you and the state to both provide that information or that document to one of the deputies and they'll be able to approach the witness for you, okay?
Thank you.
All right. Do you have any questions about the court's ruling or the procedures for you having movement throughout the courtroom during the course of our trial?
No, I understand. And you said that it would be clarified greater once we get closer to that date. But I would like to ask, please, when the time does come for any exhibits or anything to be handed to jurors, yourself or anyone in the courtroom, is it an option for the state or a deputy? Or is it specifically whoever's the closest and can do it faster?
So what I'm going to do, ma'am, is I have spoken with the sheriff's office. I'm going to endeavor to have additional security in the office or in the courtroom so that there will be a deputy for basically your disposal, be seated closer to you, so that if you have a document that you want to bring to a witness's attention or ask them questions about it, you can hand it to that dedicated deputy for you, ma'am.
Yes, that is my preference, please. Thank you.
That's what I'm endeavoring to try to do for you.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions about the ruling?
No, sir.
Okay, so your motion is granted for the reasons stated on the record.
Thank you.
State, anything to clarify?
No, Your Honor.
Okay. All right, the last issue that I had on my list this morning was the scheduling order and notice of hearings that the court entered on August 5 required the jail to provide the every Monday at 9 a.m. commencing August 12, 2024, a representative from the Orange County Jail sent email to my judicial assistant, email provided in the order, all notebook entries from IMS from the prior week, Monday through Sunday, for every issuance of the laptop and USB device is issued to the defendant. I'm simply changing that to close of business from 9 a.m. to close of business at 5 p.m. And that order will be hand delivered to Ms. Boone and e-filed to the state today.
Okay.
Is there anything else, state, that we need to address?
No, Your Honor.
Okay. Ma'am, is there anything else that you'd like to bring to my attention?
Yes, please.
Yes, ma'am.
In regards to the status report, you were just speaking about regarding them providing me with the laptop each day. What is your definition of entries?
The protocol, ma'am, that was read to you, that you were given a hard copy of Monday and was also mailed to you on, I believe, the 30th, at the appropriate PO box for legal mail. The protocol identifies entries that are in the information management system at the jail for when the laptop is released to you and then returned.
Okay, so it's simply just an entry by the officer stating that they gave it to me and it was returned.
I'm making that assumption. I'm just relying on what is in the protocol.
Okay, my concern was they're not stating what it was that I looked at for how long and
I don't know that they're going to record that information of the protocol, ma'am. It's just simply when it's checked out and returned under the protocol.
Yes, thank you for that clarification. And then also for the notice of the expected evidence and witnesses at the trial, we didn't discuss the physical evidence. And I know that that was something pending in regards to the media being.
The physical evidence, we're set to review that here in court on September 3rd at 9 o'clock in the morning. And that was identified in the order from the 5th, ma'am, which you said that you got a copy of through the mail. That's in paragraph 5. The state's physical evidence will be reviewed with the state and the defendant on September 3, 2024 at 9 a.m. at courtroom 12A, Orange County Courthouse, and the address of the courthouse. So the physical evidence will be reviewed at that point in time.
Yes, Your Honor, I understand. My question though was, are you still trying to decide or research having the media?
Yes, ma'am. I've pulled the case law on it. I need to review that case law to see if an evidentiary hearing is required. I know that we have a hearing that we had set for August 14th, which was to address a couple of other issues, specifically your motion to receive the hard copy documents. We no longer need that hearing on August 14th at 1:30 because the jail has confirmed that they have space and Mr. Lane's taking care of that today. But I do want to utilize that hearing for, I still want to utilize that hearing since we've carved it out. So at that hearing, we can address the media issue based on the court's review of the case law and determine if we have to have an evidentiary hearing, we can have an evidentiary hearing at that time. And also we can utilize that as a status as to your review, ma'am, of the digital evidence and to confirm that you've had the opportunity to review it. You don't have to finalize it, but just to see where you are in reviewing that digital evidence that the state may be seeking to introduce at trial.
This is for the 14th.
That's correct, ma'am.
And what is the time, please?
1:30 in the afternoon.
Okay, and for the case law that you are researching and referencing, are we able to have a copy of it prior?
Sure. I don't see any problem. It's the Miami Herald decision. I don't know the citation off the top of my head, but I don't have a problem.
I have no problem. I'm familiar with the case.
Sure. Ma'am, what I'll do is I'm going to prepare another order. I'll be able to hand deliver you the one today, changing the Orange County Jail, providing the notebook entries from 9 a.m. to close of business. I can hand deliver that to you today. But in the order that I mail to you, ma'am, it'll provide the case law with regard to the your privacy and media concerns.
Yes, thank you.
And that'll be heard on August 14th at 1:30, in addition to a status on the digital. Now, ma'am, based on the scheduling order that the court entered back on August 5, you have 14 days from today, absent of showing a good cause, to extend any deadlines to provide your objections in writing to that evidence.
Forgive me, it's objections for the
The
evidence from
digital
the state
evidence, the digital evidence only.
of the 2 USB drives from Mr. Lane?
Oh, no, ma'am, the USB drive that Mr. Lane's going to be providing to the jail today that has those 9 items
Oh, yes.
as identified in this notice of expected evidence that you were provided today.
14 days and I have to write objections?
That is correct. So your objections to the digital discovery will be due no later than August 23rd. And I will put this all in order for you as well, ma'am.
Thank you.
I believe that addresses all of the court's matters that were teed up for today. State, do you have anything else?
No, no.
Ma'am, is there anything else?
I do have this. I made a copy of it for you. This letter that I supplied to Captain Di Giovanni upon her return, knowing what I am requesting. I don't know if I'm able to tell you, but it is a basic laptop. I have no internet and I have no phone. I'm trying to utilize the classroom that is in our dorm. I'm trying to have access to a phone. The USB drives, how they're being handled, I feel very uncomfortable with, as I referenced to you prior. They're being taken out of the bags and then paperwork is being removed from those bags. Like parts of the USB drives cannot be viewed, which I will discuss with Mr. Lane tomorrow when I visit with him.
Ma'am, you can give your letter to the deputy We will file that in the court file. Part of the reason we had set the August 14th hearing on your motion for the hard copy discovery was that Captain DiGiovanni was returning on August the 12th from a vacation, and we were endeavoring to have a representative from the jail or herself be here for that hearing. So in addition to a status as to your review of the digital evidence, a hearing on media request or prevent media from being at the September 3rd discovery viewing hearing will address your concerns as identified in this letter and have a representative from the jail, be it Captain DiGiovanni or someone else here to address those concerns.
Thank you. And if I may say one last thing, please, in regards to the media being a part of my discovery hearing, I am highly opposed to it.
What are you highly opposed to?
That is, I know that I have a lot of my case details that are already online. For me to be recorded, inspecting and testing and photographing, I believe that is my business only, and one bit of privacy that I should be able to maintain, especially being in the courtroom doing so.
You're talking about the September 3rd evidence view, right?
For the media?
Correct.
Correct.
Okay. Again, ma'am, we're going to have that hearing on the 14th.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Any other questions, ma'am?
No.
Okay. I will see you all on August 14th at 1:30. Oh, thank you. Ma'am, as the attorney from the Justice Administration Commission had identified, he has provided the court via email the pro se packet. I have a hard copy for you, and I'm going to have Ms. Barrios also send you a copy by way of the mail. It was already mailed. Okay, we're going to mail you a copy as well, ma'am. Today, I'm going to give this to the deputy and provide to you. This is the pro se packet that the JAC attorney made reference to on our hearing on August 5.
Yes, thank you. And then also the public defender's office, you said, would be meeting me downstairs?
They're going to be meeting you momentarily. Be that right here or downstairs, I'm not sure. But they will be meeting you to discuss that. Okay, thank you, Ms. Click. All right, any other questions, Dave?
No, Your Honor.
Any other questions, ma'am?
No, Your Honor.
All right, we'll see you on August 14th at 1:30. We'll return Ms. Boone to the Orange County Jail.
Thank you.
Bruce.
Well, there we have it. That was her hearing yesterday. So they're pretty much caught up on this channel for the Sarah Boone case, at least. So we'll get these other trials and stuff set up and ready to go in the system. What's off topic, Casey? I'd have a huge list too, girl. But I do want to thank you for joining me. Yeah, we could probably get some merch for the channel once we get a little bigger. I'll start working on that. Come up with some ideas. Give me some ideas for some merch, Casey. Oh, a sticker. I like that. That's cool. That would be cool. That and some t-shirts. Thank you guys so much for joining me today. I really enjoyed sitting here with y'all and going through this. So, well, I'm gonna jump on. We've been at this. Oh, keychain. I like that idea, Casey. Tell your daughter that's a great idea. And those are rather easy to make too. Yeah, I just looked at my timer and we're at 3 hours and 52 minutes in streaming. So tell her I said thank you too. So, but I'm going to get off from here and try to get some housework done and stuff like that. So, but thank you for hanging with me today, guys. It was a lot of fun and I really enjoyed spending the day with you. I will talk to all of you later and I'll be setting up some live streams. So thanks again, guys. Have a fantastic weekend. Bye.